Chapter 722, Progress Deep Underground. Wei Sheng's eyes were tightly closed and his face was as white as paper. Suddenly, a thread of blood came out of the body of the god-killing blood sword. The blood flow quickly increased. With the streams of blood coming off the sword, it appeared as though it was just pulled out of a pool of blood. The viscous blood seemed to be alive as it inched along the sword, climbing onto Wei Sheng's sword hand and up onto his arm. Blood continued to come out of the god-killing blood sword, and then visibly seeped into Wei Sheng's body. Color began returning to Wei Sheng's white face. In the earth, Wei Sheng did not give off any presence. There were thousands of parts piled up in mountains around Zhuo, each one a different shape and design. He didn't rest, eat, or drink for 5 whole days, one part after another forming in his hand and then being thrown onto the mountainous pile next to him. Even with Zhuo's strong Mo physique, his body showed clear signs of weariness and exhaustion. However, the Sun-Shin fire in front of him was unusually steady and didn't tremble at all. Zhuo's astounding forging skill was perfectly displayed. Another part was finished. He stopped and shoved a handful of Lingdan into his mouth. He carefully felt Ling power surge into his dried channels. The Sun Seed was best for recovering Shin power, but Zhuo couldn't bear to use them. But he had a huge pile of Lingdan in his ring, and he could waste them as he wished. With every Sun Seed used of his finite supply, there would be one less. Taking the time while his Ling power was recovering, he examined the King's Forbidden Firmament again. The Jinji that Golden Crow Camp had designed naturally leaned more towards seal formations, and the King's Forbidden Firmament was not an exception. While it used Mo matrices, it was still mostly seal scripts. The seal scripts made up 7/10 and the Mo matrices 3/10 of the Jinji. Zhuo's spell level had been exercised greatly by the astounding number of things forged, and adding on the aid of the Gravestone Oath, Zhuo's weakest skill, spells, had improved rapidly. Right now, it had reached the 2nd class and was the same as his Yao arts. After his greatest shortcoming was amended, his power had quickly increased. According to PUS system, Zhuo's present Shin power level was intermediate earth level, and his Shin technique was 2nd class. However, it was far behind the Rhinoceros Mo god. The Rhinoceros Mo god's Shin power level was late earth level, and his Shin technique was 1st class. If he didn't have the little Mo treasure cup, Zhuo could not even hope to match the Rhinoceros Mo god. But after his Shin technique reached 2nd class, Zhuo's forging speed became even faster. His control of Sun-Shin fire reached an astounding level. This meant that he would almost never make mistakes. The quality of the parts that he forged using Shin power far surpassed the level that Golden Crow Camp had required in their design. Altogether, there were 18,000 parts. Each part was a work of art, the perfect merging of Mo matrices and seal scripts giving off an unique beauty. Zhuo found after forging these parts that the effect of Shin power in forging was even more outstanding. Shin power and Shin fire could almost completely purify the impurities in materials, and inscribe Mo matrices and seal scripts into the material. This kind of inscription was completely different from Ling power and was closer to a natural growth. Other than the astounding rate of Shin power expenditure, Zhuo was overjoyed at its effects. Zhuo used a new forging method for all the core parts. He called it the Shun forging method. Of the 18,000 parts, he forged 81 using the Shun forging method. What was another happy surprise to Zhuo was that he found the Shun forging method could greatly increase the skill of Shin techniques. The skill level of Shin techniques was determined by the control level of Shin power. Previously, Zhuo was only able to increase his Shin technique power through increasing his 3 powers. With the Shun forging method, he could use it to increase his Shin technique and control for multiplied effects. However, Zhuo had tested. Not all materials could be used with the Shun forging method. Materials under 6th grade would turn to ash when the Shun forging method was used. Zhuo found several kinds of patterns from the gold leaf that were close to Mo matrices and seal scripts. He called them Shin glyphs. He had used one on the angel device raiment, and it had been the simplest one. Zhuo had now mastered 2 Shin glyphs. Other than the one he had used on the angel device raiment, he had one other Shin glyph. Materials that could support Shenglyphs had to be at least 8th grade. The reason for at least was because Zhuo Mo had tried with a 7th grade material and then watched as it turned into a pile of ash. He had some 8th grade materials, but he didn't bear to use it to experiment. Only now did Zhuo Mo feel shocked by the grade of the Mo weapon rudiments he had created with the weapon layer craftsmanship. They were able to tolerate Shenglyphs, didn't mean they were at least 8th grade? This caused Zhuo Mo to be filled with interest about the weapon layering craftsmanship. While general-level Mo weapons were expensive, but as long as it was a Mo weapon, it could be bought. But 8th grade materials were not things that could be bought with Mabe. It definitely was a profitable business to use general-level Mo weapons to convert to 8th grade materials. Little Mo Goose suppressed his urges to do business. He felt the recovering Shun power turn into the 3 powers and then slowly into Shun power. He once again went back to forging. 10 whole days. When the last part was finished, Zhuo Mo looked at the mountain of parts in front of him with a feeling of accomplishment. 18,000 parts. He had finished in 10 days. While he had finished all the required parts, he did not set up the Jinji immediately. He shoved a great number of Lingdan into his mouth and entered meditation. Only he would dare to use so many Lingdan at once. If it was a Xiozha, their Ling channels would rupture and explode. Zhuo Mo's Mo physique was powerful, and his channels were much stronger than other Xiozha. His Ling power could also turn into other powers and reduce the stress on his channels. 3 days later, he opened his eyes again. The faint Great Day matrices appeared on his eyes with an indescribable aura. All of the power in his body, and his tired mind had recovered to peak condition. Standing up, he waved his hand lightly and the mountain of parts in front of him disappeared into the air. Ian was very happy when Grandmaster summoned him immediately after leaving seclusion. This showed that Grandmaster trusted him, but when he learned that Grandmaster had not forged Earth Mo weapons, Ian was slightly disappointed. If Grandmaster forged Earth Mo weapons, he could pick 2 for free. However, he was more relieved. As long as there were no more Earth Mo weapons, the situation which was already so tense that a spark could ignite it would not be further exacerbated. Ian felt fear at the dangerous situation of Buzhou City. But Grandmaster's next words caused him to pale and almost jump up. Grandmaster, please do not. The present Buzhou City is a barrel of dynamite, it might explode at any movement. If you leave the city now... Ian wanted to persuade Zhuo Mo away. Zhuo Mo knew his worry and comforted, "It's fine, we will be careful and no one will know. You are familiar with the region, do you know any place nearby that has a river, mountain, and earth fire?" Dennis' expression was frantic as he opened his mouth to speak. Zhuo Mo saw his expression and waved his hand to stop the other. He said, "Don't persuade me otherwise, I also know it is not safe outside. However, if something happens, can you keep me safe?" "This is relatively safe," Ian said. "Relatively safe?" Zhuo Mo smirked coldly. "If the marshal comes, is it still safe? If it is 2 marshals, is it still safe? 3? There are at least 5 marshals in the city." Ian broke out in a cold sweat and couldn't think of any counterarguments. Zhuo Mo waved his hand and said gently, "This cannot be blamed on you. I have to consider the worst-case situation. Is there any place nearby that satisfies my needs?" Ian did not argue further. Since Grandmaster knew, then he definitely had some move that Ian didn't know. He thought for a moment and then his eyes lit up. He said, "About 700 li northwest of Buzhou City, there is a place called the Grave Ghost Mound. It has a river, mountain, and earth fire. However, that place is heavy with Yin energy and ghost fiends frequently appear. It is also not a populous place." Zhuo Mo heard this and didn't hesitate. "Then we'll go to the Grave Ghost Mound." Ian gritted his teeth and nodded. "Grandmaster, please wait for a moment." A short while later, the elite guards of Rare Artifacts Hall finished gathering. Zhuo Mo's gaze swept the 70 guards in front of him and nodded inwardly. Rare Artifact Hall was really an old faction with a long history. Just these 70 people represented a considerable amount of power. Especially that guard leader with the indifferent expression, he was marshal level. Zhuo Mo could not imagine a marshal willing to act as a guard leader for a business. No wonder Rare Artifacts Hall was so confident. They had such an expert, and naturally did not fear. Zhuomo's gaze swept around. Agu, Seng Lianer, and Bean Sprout were all here, and only Qinghua Shui was missing. What was that woman doing? Zhuomo was puzzled and was about to ask Pu Yao when his vision blurred and Qinghua Shui appeared and bowed. Sorry for the wait. The moment that Qinghua Shui appeared, the guard leader's expression changed, and his pupils contracted. Zhuomo examined Qinghua Shui. His expression did not change, but he was shocked inside. Pu, what did you do to her? Zhuomo immediately asked Pu Yao in secret. He remembered that Pu Yao had Qinghua Shui go to the Ten-Finger Prison and most likely had passed something to her. However, the increase in her power was so great it was slightly terrifying. Pu Yao was lazy. Nothing major. I coincidentally had a completed blue flower on my hand, so I gave it to her. Just that? Zhuomo didn't believe it. Pu Yao said amusedly, the blue flower family are a bunch of idiots and wasted such a good seed. Her calmness is shocking, and she is the calmest person I have ever seen. She is born to cultivate the blue flower. Her accumulation is so great you cannot imagine it. However, she didn't have the following parts of the art, so she was stuck at her previous level. Can you imagine it? The previous her compared to when she was 13 hasn't changed much. The blue flower family has no eyes. However, if she was not so calm, after being stuck for so many years, she would have exploded a long time ago. That is too exaggerated. Looking at Qinghua Shui, Zhuomo was still amazed. There was such a freak in the world. Chapter 723, A Snowy Blue Flower Taking Advantage of the Cover of Darkness. Under the protection of the Rare Artifacts Hall guards, the group secretly left the city that night. A journey of 700 li was not far for them. Out of consideration for safety, when they left the city, they suddenly sped up. They did not spare the endurance of their mo steeds and flew at top speed. The moon and stars were bright, the night wind howled, and the group all had extremely grave expressions. If one had to say who was under the most surveillance in Buzhou City, it was undoubtedly Zhuomo. While there was a blood pool deep in the compound that led out the city, this did not guarantee that they would not attract any attention. As expected, when they were just 30 li outside of the city, they noticed people trailing them. The guard leader of Rare Artifacts Hall's expression did not change as he said coldly, Team 2, stop them. 7 guards quickly left the ranks and charged towards the enemies following them. Their mission was not to kill the enemy but delay them. The guard leader glanced at Zhuomo. Seeing Zhuomo's calm expression, a hint of praise flashed through his eyes. He moved his gaze away and ordered, burning fire medicine. The other guards heard this and each took out a bright red medicinal pellet, then shoved it into the mouths of the mo steeds under them. The eyes of the mo steeds immediately filled with blood and their speed doubled. Faint sorrow flashed through the eyes of many guards. These mo steeds had mostly followed them for many years, and were their companions. The burning blood medicine could activate their greatest potential, but when the effects passed, they would die. The effects of the burning blood medicine was clear. The mo steeds were of extraordinary quality to start, and fast. Now that their speed doubled, they instantly left the people behind in the dust. Some guards released a breath. The pressure of the mission this time surpassed any of their previous missions. Zhuomo and Seng Lianer exchanged a look of seriousness. Even with their increased speed, they had not managed to throw everyone off. There were at least 3 people still following closely behind. Qinghua Shui seemed to detect it as well. She looked at Zhuomo. Other people thought that Xiao Yunhai was just a mo weapon master, but she knew that Xiao Yunhai was Xiao mo gu. She knew Xiao mo gu was strong. Detecting Qinghua Shui's gaze, Zhuomo's mouth did not move, but his voice passed clearly into her mind. Mind-speech art. Qinghua Shui was slightly shocked. She hadn't thought that Xiao mo gu would even know such an obscure Yao art. There are 3 behind us, and when something happens, you will be the first to attack. Pay attention and try to lead them to a place without people. Qinghua Shui imperceptibly nodded. She was intelligent and immediately understood what Zhuomo intended. Of all of them, only she could fight without any reservations, so she naturally became the main fighting force. Her mind was calm and restful. She was not excited at all about the battle about to come. If this was any other person and their power had just skyrocketed, their fighting spirit would most likely be high now. Suddenly, a dangerous shadow appeared in the calm lake of her mind. Qinghua Shui's expression was calm as the fingers on her right hand pointed behind her. The Yao art that had been prepared left her hand was revealed. A blue ray of light flew out of her hand and, like a soft ribbon, circled around and then shot behind her. Blue flower fulfillment wrapping technique. If the Blue family patriarch was here, he would be greatly surprised. The blue flower fulfillment wrapping technique was a secret of the Blue family that only the main branch could learn. Even in the present family, there were less than 5 members that could use this technique, and all of them were elders older than 40 years. Qinghua Shui had a clear understanding of her power and her position. With Sui Mo and the others as support behind her, she did not need to hold anything back. At the same time, her left hand rose. There was a blue bat on her wrist. This blue bat looked adorable without any hint of killing energy like a pet. Blue flower bat. The blue bat opened its mouth and gave off a few squeaks. A faint handful of blue light shot out of the blue bat's mouth. Within the area covered by the blue light, a figure appeared. The other hadn't thought that Qinghua Shui's Yao art was so strong. Caught off guard, he was struck. When the blue light touched the body, it turned into a dense blue fire that clung onto the person's body and burned. The other's disguise immediately disappeared and revealed his true appearance. A bright red Ling armor with many places covered in a layer of blue flowers. He looked disheveled. Xiaoxia. The other guards were astounded. While they knew that Xiaoxia had managed to sneak into the MO territories for the angel device raiment, they hadn't thought that the Xiaoxia would be so daring. Between experts, a misstep in one moment would mean losing the advantage. Just as this Xiaoxia was forced to show himself by the blue light, the blue flower fulfillment wrapping technique silently wrapped onto the other's legs. The thin blue ribbon was unusually strong. Pia, the other's Ling armor at his legs immediately shattered. A furious howl. A blue sword light shot into the sky like a hailstorm. Countless shards of ice spread. The blue light of the blue bat was actually blocked by these shards of ice. The blue flower fulfillment technique that had wrapped around the other was cut into multiple lengths by the sword energy. Zuomo's pupils suddenly shrank, and a strong murderousness spread. Kunlun's sword Xiao. What the other cultivated was Kunlun's famous glacier sword. It used the ancient and ever-frozen glacier as sword essence, and could freeze all. This person's cultivation was close to Fanshu and extremely powerful. While he had lost the advantage at the start, when he attacked, the presence was as different as expected. Qinghua Shui did not think that much. She was not so innocent to think that her 2 Yao arts just now were enough to kill the other. After her 2 Yao arts left her hand, she had begun preparing new Yao arts. Her wrist turned, the blue bat spread its wings and flew into the sky. Countless rays of blue light fell from the body of the blue bat. In the next moment, these thin rays of light formed a blue tower. The blue tower was covered in exquisite patterns. A blue bat stood guard at the top of the tower. Bat tower. The blue tower moved quickly. Like an enormous metal cage, it even enveloped the shards of ice. The iciness immediately dissipated, and the ice shards inside the tower disappeared at an astounding rate. Lu Han was both shocked and angry. He hadn't thought a single moment of inattention would cause him to end up in such a disadvantageous state. He usually was proud. When had he been left so disheveled before? Also, the enemy was just a little girl. If news of this spread, wouldn't his reputation fall to the floor? For the mission this time, the sect had really bled and sent out numerous experts. When the angel device raiment had appeared in the MO territories, it meant that Kunlun would not be able to obtain it through conventional methods. If they couldn't trade for it, they could only steal it. In order to not attract attention, the sword Xiao of Kunlun split into groups to sneak into the MO territories. Lu Han's group arrived the earliest and had been hidden near Buzhou City all this time to search for an opportunity. Out of wariness, he had set up several secret scouting bases outside the city. Tonight, these secret scouts finally became useful. However, he wasn't the only one to set up secret scouts outside of the city. During the pursuit, they had encountered many factions with the same goal. A melee battle had started, a short yet intense one. In the span of a few dozen breaths, almost all of the elite sword xiu around him had died. In the Mo territories, Kunlun didn't just lack advantages, they also were in enemy territory. If their identities were exposed, they would be surrounded and attacked by other Mo factions. Lu Han was powerful and didn't lose the target. There were also two people who didn't get left behind like himself. His original intentions had been to sneak close to Xiao Yunhai, capture him, and then use him to control the situation. He hadn't expected that he would be found by Qinghua Shui just as he neared. In the intelligence he received, Qinghua Shui was an insignificant person. While she had fought against the head of the Tang family guards, but in the eyes of pseudo-Fanshu level Xiozha, strength of that level wasn't worth a mention. Yet they quickly found the details on Qinghua Shui. Qinghua Shui was born from a branch family of the Blue Flower family. The fact that she had been sent to join the envoy proved that the Blue Flower did not place any importance on her. Everyone had thought that she had appeared by Xiao Yunhai's side because Feng Xnz had gifted her as a maid to Xiao Yunhai. This speculation was appropriate to her status and identity. However, this woman that was thought to be a maid had put him in a sorry state. His first conclusion was that she was a secret piece that Feng Xnz had set down. Yet the time did not allow him to think on this further. The other's Yao arts came constantly like a noose continuously tightening around his neck. The blue light inside the blue tower was multiple times thicker than before. He seemed to have fallen into a bog. Each movement was difficult. Even stranger was that the speed of his Ling power circulation inside his body had started to slow as well. At this time, Lu Han didn't dare to underestimate Qinghua Shui at all. He moved all the Ling power in his body and shouted. The ice soul sword in his body was suddenly thrust into the ground. Snowy white icy frost quickly spread into the surroundings. Then immediately after, the ground around Lu Han started to tremble violently as though something was about to break out. Crack crack. Cracks appeared on the ground. Countless snowy white and icy sword essences flooded out of the ice cracks. 10,000 sword glacier. The ice swords that erupted from the ground could be counted in the tens of thousands. It was like a ferocious flood of ice swords. The cold edges almost tore the exquisite blue tower to pieces in the blink of an eye. The guard leader's expression changed slightly. Even he couldn't help but reach for his Mo weapon at such a vast and furious sword essence. As expected of a Kunlun sword xiu. Yet Qinghua Shui reacted a step ahead of him. She seemed to have expected that the blue tower would not be able to stop the enemy. The blue flowers that were torn up in the ice sword flood suddenly lit up faintly. It was like a group of fireflies flying in the night. The dots were beautiful mixed in the enemy's ice sword flood. Blue firefly pounce. Lu Han suddenly found that the ice sword flood was raging out of his control. He was stunned. There were dots of blue light within the ice sword flood. No matter what method he used, he was unable to remove them. It was these dots of blue light that caused his control of sword essence to falter. He had never seen such a strange Yao art before. He had never heard of the Blue Flower family having such a move before. Lu Han was astounded. The Blue Flower had some fame among the Yao, and Kunlun had relatively detailed records of the Blue Flower technique. After being defeated continuously, Lu Han felt fear. Then he looked at the rare artifacts hall guard leader waiting at the side. He knew that his plan had failed. If they continued to fight, the ambush would become a frontal assault that would not be advantageous to him. He was decisive and did not hesitate to move away and retreat. Qinghua Shui's inexperience in battle showed at this time. She hadn't expected that Lu Han would retreat without any warning. She was a step late in reacting. Just at this time, something suddenly happened. Chapter 724, An unexpected occurrence. Zhumo's murderous intent was great, but he forced it down. It was not a good time to enter the fray now. Yet at this moment, a gray shadow suddenly flashed across his vision, and Zhumo's expression changed dramatically. A Gue seemed to appear out of thin air behind Lu Han. Her hand that flashed with purple energy soundlessly pressed against Lu Han's back. Lu Han did not seem to detect it and continued to sprint forward. The purple handprint on his back created an eerie purple streak of light in the night. He went just 3 more zhang and the purple light continued to corrode Lu Han's body. But Lu Han didn't seem to detect it and flew forward. Patches of purple energy disappeared in the air like leaves swept up by the wind. What disappeared with them was Lu Han's body. Everyone who saw this felt as though an icy wind swept across their hearts and their hairs stood up. The stony-faced rare artifact Hall Headguard's expression changed. Zuo also changed expression at the same time. He thought this was bad. He didn't know why Ague suddenly attacked Lu Han. Ague was functioning on pure instinct, and she definitely had felt something. Had Lu Han in the past? Zuo shook his head. This was not the time to think about this. It definitely wasn't possible to conceal Agui's unexpected attack. There were 2 more people hiding in the shadows that would have seen her. Their identities would be soon exposed. Zuo took a deep breath and calmed the shock inside. His mind was peerlessly calm. There wasn't much time left to him. He needed to finish the setup before these people managed to react. Right now, there wasn't enough time to run away. Those that were gathering were the strongest experts in the world. The probability of running away from these people was almost 0. Also, the reverse shadow soul silkgrass was almost here. If he ran away now, all of his efforts would have been for waste. Zuo said gravely, "Go, hurry to Grave Ghost Mound." At this time, he did not hide his strength and flew with all his power. Ague, Tseng Lianer and Qinghua Shui heard this, didn't hesitate and flew at full power. A hint of shock flashed across the face of the rare artifact Hall Headguard before his expression became indifferent again. "All of you return first." "Darren," the other guards said panically. "You will not be able to participate in the upcoming battles." Then he leapt off the Mo steed to chase after Zuo and the others. The other guards looked at each other. One person quickly said, "We need to hurry back to report to boss." The group did not hesitate and hurriedly returned. Zuo looked at the head guard that had caught up to them. He was slightly surprised and said, "You don't have to enter this mess." "I will naturally finish what boss has ordered," the head guard said gravely. A hint of admiration flashed through Zuo's eyes. "What is Sir's name?" "Quine," the head guard said coolly. Zuo nodded and didn't speak further. The group focused on traveling. Flying at top speed, they managed to cover 700 li in less than 2 hours. "This is the Grave Ghost Mound," Quine said. Without Quine's words, Zuo would still know they reached their destination. This place was so heavy with Yin energy that he could feel it from far away. Zuo was slightly surprised. Such thick Yin energy would not have naturally formed. He could feel the thick death energy mixed within it. He couldn't help but ask, "What is the history of this place?" Supposedly, during the ancient era, a great battle of over 10 tribes occurred here. Countless warriors fell on this place, and their ghosts were difficult to dissipate and turned into specters and Yin fiends. However, that is just a rumor, and there is no evidence, Quine said expressionlessly. Zuo looked down and murmured to himself, "It probably isn't just a rumor." Quine's eyes suddenly lit up. Zuo did not look at Quine. His gaze swept across the Grave Ghost Mound. This place fulfilled all of his needs. It had mountains, water, and there was the smell of sulfur in the air, which meant that this place had earth fire. The Yin River here had been corroded by the Yin energy for a lengthy amount of time and really was a river of Yin energy now. Speaking just in terms of environment, this place was very suited to setting up the King's Forbidden Firmament. The Yin River was an unexpected surprise and could greatly increase the power of the Jinji. But for some reason, Zuo felt a thread of anxiousness. Zuo shook his head and threw the thread of uncertainty behind him. Even if there was something strange here, it could not compare to the immediate and apparent threat from the experts that would soon arrive. Mo Shin Temple, Kunlun, all the Mo marshals, the Yao Council of Elders. There was no need to count all of them, just these few was enough to rob people of courage. Zuo did not feel any fear at all. Even though Agui's sudden attack had messed up all of his preparations, he felt relieved of a heavy burden. He no longer needed to be careful, did not need to conceal himself. It was as though he had thrown away all of the chains and qualms weighing him down, and he felt unspeakably relaxed. Thinking about how he was about to fight against the top experts famed in the world, fighting spirit filled his heart and his body with endless strength. To contend against the heroes of the world with just his own power. Just thinking about it caused his blood to boil. So, Elder, you knew that Xiao Yunhai was Xiao Emogu already? The young Emo god had an enchanting smile on his face. He stood there lazily as though he was about to lay down and sleep. The old man that was in front of him grinned to show his missing and yellow teeth. I would never admit that. I'm really curious, Elder, what is the relationship between you and Xiao Emogu? Relatives? The young Emo god asked with a smile. The old man shook his head. You are wrong, I don't have a good relation with him. Then you are enemies? The young Emo god shook his head. It doesn't appear so. Stop guessing, you won't be able to get it right, the old man said unconcernedly. The scab fragrance isn't something normal. While I don't hope that you will return it to me, but, Elder, you have to give an explanation. Otherwise, it will be a great embarrassment to me. The young Emo god spread his hands. The old man grinned and said, this old man didn't break any promise. I said that he was able to force Shen devices. While the angel device raiment isn't a true Shen device, if you get it and study a bit, you may possibly be able to forge your own Shen device. The young Emo god sighed and said, it seems that we will have to fight today. The old man urged, why? Everyone knows each other's power. You alone cannot beat me. If there are 2 of you, then I definitely cannot win. But only if there are 3 of you would I be unable to escape. That's true. It seems that I can only bear the humiliation until they come, the young Emo god tiled his head and said. But we will have to fight no matter what. The old man smiled. You want me to help you delay? While I am very lazy, what can I do? What I won't be able to get, I'm displeased that the turtles behind me still aim for them. The young Emo god's expression was pained. Yes. The old man nodded repeatedly with agreement on his face. Also, you say that I cannot defeat you, I'm also displeased by this. The young Emo god raised his face and looked directly at the old man. His Shen power rippled. The usual laziness on the handsome face had disappeared and what replaced it was unusual focus. This cased his face to have a light that was eerie and almost something that people could not directly look at. The stone around him seemed to be attracted by an invisible force and slowly floated upwards. Boom! A strong Shen pressure spun around him and grew stronger as it revolved. It pulled all of the power within dozens of li. It was like a twister that reached directly into the sky. His smile was still enchanting but unusually sharp. There's no way about it. There are many matters in the world that are displeasing, the old man grinned and said. He shook his head and stepped forward. His steps were not heavy, but in the moment he stepped onto the ground, boom, a deep rumble like that of a drum sounded. The ground within 100 li seemed to be stuck, and shook once. A spiderweb of cracks spread more than 7 li with his right foot as the center. The cracks that appeared seemed to reach into the underworld, deep and bottomless. The young Emo god's twister shook. The top part of it suddenly lost control, turned into chaotic turbulence and scattered. The young Emo god's eyes narrowed slightly. The light that came from his narrowed eyes were sharp as blades. A smile spread on his mouth. There are many people that have come. The old man sighed. It seems that we need to show some actual skill. Otherwise, we aren't able to intimidate these people. I dislike doing hard labor. The young Emo gold seemed to say to himself. His eyes lit up with a burning light. The gazes of the two collided in the air and sparks flew. The strength of the power vibrations produced by the fighting of 2 Shen power experts was like the sun in the dark of the night. Not just the nearby Buzhou city, even Zhou Mo a few hundred li away clearly felt it. Everyone in Buzhou city was startled away. In this period of time, the undercurrents and the continuously intensifying conflicts had been detected by many of the locals who left Buzhou city long ago. Right now, the majority of people in Buzhou city were outsiders. The remaining were large families such as the Tang family who thought they had the ability to protect themselves. But at such a time, the Tang family were on full guard. How could they not have detected such a great ruckus? Tang Chen's face was pale. The vibrations from the collision outside the city made even he, a marshal, feel his heart jump. Beside him was another middle-aged male. Beside the male was Qin Ming, Zhong Wentian, and Gong Zixi, who were all standing solemnly. He was Marshal Di, who had secretly arrived this night. Marshal Di's expression was grave. Both are using Shen power. The shock on Qin Ming's face was difficult to disguise. All of them were martial experts. Even though they had Earth MO weapons, they would have to use their full power to reach such a level. Yet the two seemed to be strolling in the park. The power ripples given off as they moved were able to upend an ocean. The youth is one of the three great MO gods of the Emotion Temple. He is called Yoshia Ku. The old man's origins are unknown, Qin Ming said gravely. Marshal Di's gaze swept across the people. Seeing the expression on their faces and how they were clearly intimidated, he suddenly smiled and said, Wentian, if you and old Qin work together, do you have the confidence to fight Yoshia Ku? Zhong Wentian's eyes lit up as he rumbled, we can fight. The other two people's expressions eased. Yes. Marshal Di's voice was strong and powerful, adding on old Tang and I, we have 4 marshals, and 4 Earth MO weapons. If we count this way, that will be 2 MO gods. We just have 1 less than the Emotion Temple. In this chaotic situation, we may have a chance. Everyone's confidence increased greatly. Then what do we do now? Tang Chen asked. Wait. Marshal Di's expression was at ease. We are not the strongest, and the timing of our action is most crucial. We must be successful on our first attempt. Old Tang, investigate and see what really happened when Xiao Yunhai left the city at night before the Shen Power expert conflict. We need to keep our eye on Xiao Yunhai. He's the crux of this. Tang Chen did not hesitate. He nodded and said, all right. Chapter 725, Shen Power Warrior. The grave ghost mound was completely dark. Flying down, everyone felt the air was icy. Even Zhuo Mo was slightly intimidated. The thickness of the Yin energy in the grave ghost mountain was on a completely different level than what he had felt from when flying. It far surpassed his predictions. Stay guard and protect me, Zhuo Mo said. I probably need about 3 days of time. He had already finished forging all the parts of the king's forbidden firmament. While the setup was slightly troublesome, it would not be difficult for Zhuo Mo. However, he had to first survey the land to prevent an accident from happening in the middle of setup. If any one of the 18,000 parts was damaged, it would damage the power of the Jinji. Even more importantly, he did not have the time to reforge these parts. Kuai nodded. Sung Lianer and Qinghua Shui also stopped. Only Agu followed besides Zhuo Mo didn't know what to do. Sometimes, Ague would be very obedient, but would sometimes act in surprising ways. It was likely that Agui's instincts that detected something. Zhuo Mo realized this and didn't waste words. He pulled Ague along as he went deeper into the grave ghost mound. His expression became increasingly grave. The Yin energy was even heavier here, almost tangible. The air was a faint gray. The coldness of the surroundings bit into his skin like thorns, and Zhuo Mo had to channel his Great Day Mo physique to counteract the Yin energy. A thin layer of gold quickly appeared on his skin. The sun matrix on his forehead started to slowly revolve. Threads of warmth spread through his body and removed the coldness. Zhuo Mo reached out and grabbed Agui's hand. The warmth of his hand passed into Agui's body. Agui's body tensed and her hand gripped Zhuo Mo's hand even more tightly. Zhuo Mo turned and smiled slightly at Agu. Then he moved his gaze to pull Agu along deep inside. He was on full alert. The Yin energy was so heavy here that there definitely would be many specters and Yin fiends. Unexpectedly, after going 20 li deep, they hadn't encountered a single Yin fiend. Such an unreasonable phenomenon caused Zhuo Mo's wariness to rise. Zhuo Mo pulled Ague to inspect a range of 50 li and hadn't found a thing. Other than the unusually strong Yin power, there was nothing suspicious or dangerous. He did not continue to investigate. 50 li was enough to satisfy the requirements for setting up the king's forbidden firmament. More importantly, he didn't have the time to investigate further. The sky was starting to lighten. Zuo knew that those people in Buzhou City most likely had received the news of his escape. He had to effectively use his time. Zuo ignored the anxiousness he felt and started to set up the king's forbidden firmament. Zuo's guess was right. At dawn, the powerful factions at Buzhou City quickly received the information. Shocked, they quickly recognized the importance of this news. Yet the two Shen power warriors that were fighting outside the city blocked the route off completely. Unless one was a martial or general expert, they would immediately die due to the lingering shockwaves of the collision between the two Shen power warriors. Many factions had already tried. However, no one had managed to get through the area where the two were fighting alive. So Xiao Yunhai is Xiao Mo. The news that Lu Han wanted to send back yesterday should be this. Ho Feng said gravely. He was a large figure, his limbs long, and there was a thick and broad sword on his back. Lei Yi's team is dead, Lu Han's team is dead. Bai Xiang's expression was grave and her tone low. She was Ho Feng's second in command. The two worked together on long-term missions and had good teamwork. I remember that the sect has information regarding Xiao Mo. Ho Feng asked. Bai Xiang was familiar with all kinds of intelligence. She said without a hint of hesitation, yes, Xiao Mo is one of our primary targets and our investigation of him has never stopped. Looking from the present information, Xiao Mo is very likely to be Zuo. Ho Feng's brow creased. This name was unfamiliar. Zuo, a disciple of Wukong Sword Sect, an orphan that their sect leader took in. He lost his memory, and his origins are unknown. He is skilled in seal formations and ling farming. He was promoted from an outer sect disciple to inner sect disciple. His talent isn't bad. This is the earliest information we have found, Bai Xiang said smoothly. Wukong Sword Sect? Ho Feng's brow creased even deeper. I remember that all of Wukong Sword Sect, everyone except Wei Xing, should be dead. Because Zuo was sent to a remote location before the invasion of the Yao, he and Wukong Sword Sect lost contact. Together with him are Gong Sun Cha and one other disciple, Bai Xiang responded. Ho Feng changed expression. Gong Sun Lil Miss? Yes. Bai Xiang nodded. Wukong Sword Sect really has many talented people. I still remember that there is a Wei Xing, that one is also strong. Shui Dong greatly praised Gong Sun Cha. I hadn't thought that he would also be from Wukong Sword Sect. Yes, actually, we only found Xiao Mo's true identity due to Gong Sun Cha, Bai Xiang said. This means that Xiao Mo and Xiao Yunhai were his fake identities? Ho Feng's brow was creased. In other words, he knows Mo's skills, Yao arts and spells? And Shen power and Shen techniques? Bai Xiang added. His origins is highly likely to be related to that storm 26 years ago. Ho Feng's eyes suddenly lit up as he murmured, no wonder. Bai Xiang's expression suddenly changed. Something has happened to Xia Li's team. Ho Feng's expression was slightly ugly and silent. Ever since the matter of Lin Qian fighting for the steel, managing Kunlun's activity in the Mo territories started to become difficult. Almost all the Mo were secretly fighting against Kunlun. This time, it was also true. If they were the least bit careless and their identity as Kunlun was leaked, they would be attacked from all sides. They had traveled far to arrive here, and fighting on foreign territory, their losses had been heavy. The sword shio that had been sent this time to the Mo territories were all elite from the sect, almost all of them Fanshu. Such losses were ones that even Kunlun couldn't shrug off. At this time, an extremely thin sword light appeared in front of Ho Feng. Ho Feng's reaction was quick. His hand beckoned and the sword light flew into his hand. The flying sword message of the sect. His expression showed joy. Return to the sect. Return to the sect? Bai Xiang stilled. The elders have come out of seclusion. Ho Feng's voice was low, but the joy on his face could not be suppressed. Bai Xiang also had a joyous expression as she said excitedly, great. We also have Shen power warriors. Now we don't need to fear the Emotion Temple. Ho Feng said proudly, our Kunlun has led the Xiozhi world for thousands of years. Can a little temple like the Emotion Temple compare to the depth of our foundation? Then the angel device raiment? Bei Xiang said hesitantly. It is just a pseudo-Shen device, Ho Feng said with a smile. The sect has spent great time and energy and found some places that are possibly ancient ruins. The next step in the sect's plan is to go to these ruins to search for true Shen devices. Searching the Xiuzhe world? Will we need to risk so much or waste so much effort? This is a good idea. I believe that there would be at least 1 or 2 Shen devices in so many ancient ruins. Bei Xiang was in agreement. Then she asked excitedly, then where have we been sent to? Return to the sect. Return to the sect? Bei Xian was puzzled. Ho Feng's smile could not be suppressed. We are in the second cohort to be taught Shen power. Once we return to the sect, we will start cultivating Shen power. Cultivate Shen power? Bei Xiang stilled, but then her eyes were full of longing. Ho Feng said, the era of Shen power is fated to be the era of Kunlun. The retreat of Kunlun was silent and didn't cause any waves. Other than those with good intelligence teams and those with high perceptiveness, everyone else was ignorant. Almost everyone's eyes were glued to the fight between the 2 Shen power warriors outside the city. Personally, seeing the fight between Shen power users was completely different than seeing it through mirages. The power as they moved which could destroy the world. A feeling of suffocation that never seemed to end. Each person felt they were so minuscule and insignificant like ants. Even martial experts had to remain alert to break free of such a terrifying feeling. There wasn't any land left untouched within 200 li of Buzhou City. The ground seemed to have been plowed over and over. It was possible to see fissures forming webs that curved and twisted for dozens of li. The land was completely fragmented. No one dared to charge in. Even Marshal D and the other 3 maintained their silence as the fighting between the 2 intensified. The astounding power turbulence was something that even they were wary of. If someone charged in now, they would most likely become the target of the 2 and would receive destructive attacks immediately. The 2 fought for a day and night without any hint of exhaustion. The young Mo god Yoshiaku was not surprising. What surprised people was that old man dressed in rags, of an unknown background, was an even match. But no matter who, if they saw this battle, they would make one conclusion. The power of Shen power was much stronger than those top MO skills. Shen power would soon become the peak power once again. A new era had already started. If there had been many people who had recognized this point previously, then after this public battle of the Shen power experts, this point was driven deep into people's minds. Kuai In's expression was wary. He was astounded by the intense fighting that was happening in the distance. For the first time, he was filled with desire towards Shen power. He had cultivated to the martial level. It would be extremely difficult to take another step up. Other than the king level that only existed in the legends, martial level was the highest level that all MO could reach. Ever since the first day he reached martial level, he was filled with confidence about his power. Yet the continuous appearances of Shen power warriors caused him to feel he was weak for the first time. He did not forget his duty. His gaze suddenly focused. Near the horizon on the opposite side of Buzhou City, several black dots suddenly appeared. There were people. Before he could give a warning, these little black dots grew large. They were so fast that they had appeared in front of him in a blink. These people were surrounding a beautiful female. Kuai In's gaze met the female's gaze. An unspeakable feeling suddenly rose. He was slightly dazed, but his reaction was quick. With a shake, he immediately became clear of it. Such a terrifying woman. When his gaze landed on the insignias on their clothing, his pupils immediately contracted and his expression changed. The Yao Council of Elders. Chapter 726 The Entrance of the Yin Energy Cave. This one is Ming Yuyi. Is Grandmaster Xiao Yunhai here? The divinely beautiful female said with a small smile. While her attitude was friendly, it was filled with great presence, and was difficult for people to resist. A serene voice seemed to come out of the black night. Grandmaster doesn't have the time, how about coming back after 3 days? Light rose at the horizon and the black of night was pushed back as dawn neared. However, Sung Lianer was in a place that seemed to be a bottomless void. She stood with her long red dress touching the ground. Her presence was different from Ming Yu's strong presence, ethereal and hard to grasp. Kuai N's face was slightly burning. He was a martial yet at just first contact, he was intimidated by the other's presence. He felt embarrassed. I have heard long ago that Miss Tseng is a lady of a famous family. You are just as the rumors say. Ming Yu smiled. Her eyes and teeth were bright and she was stunning. Sung Lianer smiled. I cannot compare to elder sister, below one person and above hundreds of thousands, power in your hands. With just a word, there are countless heroes willing to do your bidding. Ming Yu smiled. She turned and examined Qinghua Shui. A look flashed through her eyes. Are you Qinghua Shui? Qinghua Shui greets Elder Ming. Qinghua Shui bobbed slightly. The blue flower family did not have eyes, it is a pity. Ming Yu sighed lightly before staring at Qinghua Shui. I coincidentally lack an assistant. If you are willing, you can follow and work for me in the future. Qinghua Shui said composedly, Elder, many thanks for your attention. Qinghua Shui is of low ability and cannot accept such a great duty. Ichem, you do not have good judgment. An old person of proud attitude said from beside Ming Yu. No wonder that the blue flower family has declined, you deserve it. Qinghua Shui smiled gently as though she did not hear this. Suddenly, a shadow flashed through the air. That old person felt his vision blur. Something suddenly appeared in front of him. Startled, he shouted angrily, You dare! The old man's hair spread in anger, the fingers on his right hand flickering. Numerous green lights shot out. At the same time, a glass-like layer of light protected him. Phew! When the green light hit the shadow, it immediately turned into fragments. The old person's expression changed drastically. Just as he wanted to move again, the shadow suddenly disappeared. He couldn't help but still. The next moment, the shadow suddenly came out of the air right in front of the green light shield. Before he could react, he had to watch as the shadow hit the light shield. Bam! A crisp cracking sound was like thunder in his ears. Power came at him like a mountain and he was sent flying dozens of zhang like a kite with its strings cut. Seng Lianer's wrist turned and she withdrew her sleeve as though nothing had happened. She said serenely, Grandmaster is in seclusion, everyone, please be quieter. Kuai-N's eyes widened disbelievingly. She actually darted to directly attack an elder of the Yao. Qinghua Shui stilled slightly. However, her expression remained the same and her mind was undisturbed. A deathly silence. Shen Power, another Yao elder's voice was deep and hoarse. He gazed hard at Seng Liana. The rumors say that Miss Tseng cultivates moon Shen Power which is hard to predict. You have broadened my view today. However, it is unexpected to us that Miss Tseng is so hostile to us. Seng Lianer's smile bloomed like a flower. Have you come to drink tea? This Yao elder suddenly stopped breathing. Kuai-N seemed to wake up from his dream, his expression serious. He slowly took out his MO weapon, the blue horsefly, that's what MO had just forged. Ming Yu ignored the face-off and said meaningfully, no matter if it is Xiao Yunhai or Xiao Emogu, our goal is the angel device raiment. According to what I know, many people are also scheming for your Shun Power inheritances. Seng Lianer smiled serenely and said, it will depend on whether they have the ability. That's true. Ming Yu did not argue. She suddenly reached out a hand. Several rays of light that appeared like seagrass suddenly grew from her palm and moved. Seng Lianer's voice echoed in everyone's ears. I understand, you have already mastered Shin Power. If Grandmaster is willing to sell Angel Device Raiment, we will guarantee Grandmaster's safety. We only need the Angel Device Raiment. Ming Yu glanced at her. Seng Lianer brushed her bangs in front of her forehead and said softly, it probably isn't enough just based on the few of you. I dare to say this because I have some confidence. Ming Yu did not avoid Seng Lianer's doubtful gaze. Her tone was not spirited but it was filled with strong confidence that made people feel that she would be able to do it. Who can we not sell to? Seng Lianer smiled. However, with Grandmaster's temper, the Pseudoshin device will not be cheap. Pseudoshin weapon. These three words clearly touched the nerves of the Yao elders. Their expressions were normal but the changes in their gazes could not escape Seng Lianer's gaze. Pseudoshin device, Shen device, there has to be a price? Ming Yu's expression was normal. Are you able to give a price on behalf of Grandmaster?
No.
Sung Lianer smiled serenely. Then let Grandmaster give a price, Ming Yu said directly. Apologies, Grandmaster is in seclusion and will take 3 days. Everyone, please come back after 3 days, Sung Lianer said. 3 days? Ming Yu shook her head. We cannot wait so long. Then there is no other option? Sung Lianer shook her head. A smile blossomed on Ming Yu's face. Then let us experience Mist Zeng's moonshin power. Elder Su, please. The deep-voiced elder nodded and slowly came out of the ranks. He said seriously, the Moon Tribe was a famed tribe even in the ancient era, and the moonshin power they used stood at the peak. It is an honor to experience it today. Seng Lianer was about to speak when a voice suddenly sounded. There is no need to trouble Mist Zeng, I will start. Qian held, blue horsefly. His cool face had a murderous expression. Zuomo's movements were fast and he was but a shadow as he flew around. Rays of dazzling light flowed from his hands shooting into the ground. There were great demands for setting up such a complex jinji. There were numerous seal scripts and mo matrices. Even Zuo had to focus all of his attention. If other people saw him now, they would be dumbstruck and gaping in shock. The ground was completely transformed and covered in seal scripts and mo matrices all over. The yin energy in the surroundings was starting to be affected, and occasionally would form small twisters. Zuomo's expression was focused, and he didn't dare to split his attention. He knew time was precious. The king's forbidden firmament was their greatest ace against those experts. The faster he could finish preparing this ace, the better it was. King's forbidden firmament was 500 li in diameter in the original design, but Zuo had compressed it to 50 li. This way, it would greatly increase its power, but the difficulty of setting it up would also increase dramatically. A fine sweat covered Zuomo's forehead, but he didn't feel tired at all. His eyes flashed with a stunning light. The great pressure made him unprecedentedly focused. He was completely immersed, filled with bravery. He was in a trance. His thoughts were livelier than ever before, and his mind was clear as it never had been. His hand movements started to change, and the jinji he set up gradually started to change. Too absorbed in his work, Zuomo did not realize this. His hand movements were almost the same speed as his thoughts and like instinct. The jinji started to form a preliminary shape. The yin energy was affected even more. Large amounts of yin energy flooded out from the deeper parts of the grave ghost mound and filled the area where Zuo was setting up the jinji. Zuo perceptively noticed this, but at this time, all of his attention was on the jinji. The first reaction in his mind was how to use the stunningly dense yin energy. His hand movement instinctively changed. More and more yin energy flooded out of the grave ghost mound. They came in a flow, one wave after another as though there was no end. The drastic increase in yin energy made Zuo even more excited. The thick yin energy was a power that could be used, and yin energy of such concentration was usually difficult to find. An imperceptible ripple formed deep in the grave ghost mound. Zuo did not detect it. Ague suddenly raised her head, purple energy flashed in her eyes as she silently disappeared into the yin energy. Ague flew about 20 li before stopping. There was a deep hole in the ground near her. The thick yin energy was pouring out from that place. The yin energy at this entrance was so thick it was almost inky black. The trembling of the ground was even more evident here. The shaking would coming in bursts every 10 breaths or so. Agui's eyes suddenly flashed with purple energy as she threw herself forward. A malicious ghost came out of the hole. Its body was shrouded in black smoke and was extremely difficult to detect in the thick yin energy. Ague suddenly appeared behind it. Her hand covered in purple energy entered the body of the malicious ghost. The inky black yin energy did not affect Ague at all. The malicious ghost froze where it was. The purple energy was like a fire that spread quickly along its body. In a flash, the malicious ghost was covered in the purple fire. The purple was ferocious and the malicious ghost wasn't even able to wail before it turned to ash. After being burned up, It left behind only an extremely pure strand of yin energy. Ague opened her mouth and inhaled. The yin energy burrowed into her body. Moments later, Ague opened her eyes, and the purple energy in her eyes was slightly brighter. Another malicious ghost came out of the yin energy. The Ague repeated the process. Ague was like a ghost, her movements lightning fast. She wasn't affected by the yin energy at all. Usually, before the malicious ghosts detected anything, they would be attacked. Each malicious ghost would be burned by the undying Shin power to leave behind that thread of pure yin energy. Ague would absorb it. After consuming dozens of threads, the purple energy on Agui's hand gradually turned into purple flames. Just like before, Agui's body once again disappeared, and her hand covered in purple fire entered the yin energy. Yet the next moment, the purple fire in Agui's eyes flashed. Bam! A great power came from her hand. Agui's figure flashed, and she moved backward. Her eyes that flashed with purple fire was locked on the entrance. A burst of air swept away the yin energy at the entrance to reveal the true appearance of the incomer. Chapter 727, Ghost Soldier. A ghost soldier dressed in armor and shrouded by yin energy appeared at the cave entrance. Its empty eye sockets were filled with 2 balls of black flame. If Zuemo was here, he would be surprised to find that this ghost soldier actually gave off faint Shin power ripples. The ghost soldier suddenly opened his mouth. Like a whale inhaling, the yin energy was sucked in. The black fire in its eye sockets more than doubled in size with a snap. The yin energy around the ghost soldier turned into thin wisps of black flame on its armor. To Ague, other than the black fire, the ghost soldier didn't seem to be any different than the ghosts before it. The purple fire in Agui's eyes jumped and her body suddenly disappeared from her spot. The black fire in the ghost soldier's eyes also jumped and its body also disappeared at the same time. Bam! A black and a purple hand hit in the air. The black and purple flames shot in all directions, but the two did not seem to detect it. Their hands continued to collide. Bam, bam, bam. It was only possible to see 2 shadows in the air, and light that would occasionally illuminate the environment. The black and purple flames were everywhere. Once it came into contact with something, it would be burned to ash. Such enormous noise finally disturbed Zuemo, who had been in a trance. After focusing slightly, Zuemo immediately understood the situation. At this time, the Jinji was more than halfway finished. He did not immediately interfere and observed in the shadows for a few moments. This ghost soldier was strong, and what Zuemo hadn't expected was that it gave off evident Shin power. This was the reason that it had been able to fight Ague for so long. The other reason was that while it looked wooden, it was experienced in combat. Zuemo was shocked and intimidated by many of its moves and reactions. It must have been a very powerful expert before its death. After observing for a few more moments, Zuemo understood even more. The ghost soldier was actually slightly weaker than Ague. The reason that it was evenly matched with Ague was because of its greater battle experience. However, Ague, who relied on her instincts to fight, was not controlled by her emotions. In a short amount of time, she started to copy the other's fighting style. Ague quickly gained the upper hand. Zuemo's curiosity was piqued by the Shin power vibrations of the ghost soldier. Its Shin power was filled with thick death energy. It was different from any Shin power that Zuemo had ever seen before. There wasn't any record of this Shin power on the gold leaf. A completely new kind of Shin power. Zuemo's mind moved. At present, he knew the value of a completely new kind of Shin power. His fingers flickered and numerous lights entered the ground. The ghost soldier that was gradually being suppressed by Ague detected that it was losing and tried to turn and run into the cave. Suddenly, the surrounding yin energy became chaotic. The ghost soldier was surprised. The dense yin energy in the surroundings that he relied on for power had turned chaotic without any warning. It panicked. For Ague, whose battle tactics had improved greatly, how could she pass on such a good opening? Her body flickered, and 2 images of Ague suddenly appeared in front of the ghost soldier. The ghost soldier stilled. Suddenly, it felt a grip on its neck. Its vision blurred, and a hand covered in purple fire raised it up and smashed it hard against the ground. Ague had used Shen power, and the power of the strike was great. The ghost soldier's entire body was deeply embedded into the ground. The black fire in its eye sockets wavered from the smash. Before it could regain clarity and struggle to stand up, 2 fingers covered in purple flames pointed at the 2 balls of black fire in its eye sockets. The ghost soldier immediately became docile. That face covered in Yin energy showed fear. Zuemo quickly appeared next to Ague, crouched down and looked curiously at the ghost soldier. Zuemo had killed things like ghosts and fiends before, but he hadn't studied them greatly. Even in the Xiaoxia world, Xiaoxia of this kind were rare. Because of the Yin energy, they were not welcomed by other people. This ghost soldier's power was extraordinary to have been able to fight for so long against Ague. Zuemo was even more curious about the Shen power it had. Zuemo's fingers flickered. Several streaks of light entered the ghost soldier. The ghost soldier's body froze and was unable to move. Ague moved her hand away and stood at the side. The ghost soldier stared at Zuemo with unusual terror. Zuemo's presence was its bane. The Sun Shen power was the utmost yang and masculine, the natural enemy to ghosts that were born from Yin energy. This was also why, while this place was dense in Yin energy, Zuemo didn't fear it at all. After a momentary inspection, Zuemo was slightly shocked. The Shen power the ghost soldier had was from before its death. Due to some reason, while it was dead, its Shen power had not completely dissipated and been kept. This portion of Shen power that had been kept continued to merge with the Yin energy to form a new kind of Shen power that had never appeared before. The ghost soldier's intelligence was not high, and it fought based on instinct. Zuemo's mind moved and he turned to look at Ague. Agui's usually expressionless face showed a rare desire. In a moment, Zuemo understood. This kind of Shen power filled with the energy of death was very beneficial to Ague. Agui's Shen power was the undying Shen power and came from the undying Shen punishment. While it was called undying, it originated from the same source as death, although its expression was of the complete opposite. In the traditional understanding of death, death was the final destination but also the start. A beginning and ending, they were twins. The undying Shen punishment was to be forever unable to escape, an imprisonment that would betrap them in an endless, hopeless, and painful death. It was a death of the undying. The endless pain, suffering, hopelessness, those were the sources of the undying Shen power and also were powers that belonged to death. Yet if one could break free of the hopeless death, then it was undying life. Life forever needed to come from death. This was the foundation of the undying Shen seal. Suddenly, Zuemo had a great understanding. Yet his emotions were complex. This path was dangerous and multiple times harder than the system of traditional death. Life was forever harder than death. Zuemo did not show his emotions. He moved to the side and left the ghost soldier to Ague. Ague did not hesitate. Her hand slapped down and the Yin energy shrouding the ghost soldier immediately crumbled to expose the 2 purest balls of black fire. Ague opened her mouth and sucked in. The black fires were immediately sucked into Agui's mouth and the purple fire in Agui's eyes grew. Zuemo immediately took Agui's hand for an inspection. What was being nurtured in Agui's body became slightly clearer. The pure Shen power that contained death energy was greatly beneficial for Ague. Zuemo was slightly relieved. While he was curious what the cave held, time was tight, and this was not a good moment to explore under the ground. But this cave entrance that was continuously spewing out Yin energy would give his Jinji great help. Ague was standing guard outside the entrance. She appeared like a hungry child. Zuemo couldn't help but grin. He set up several Jinji near the entrance in case Ague encountered some danger. Who knew what else was inside the cavern? After setting this up, Zuemo continued to set up his Jinji. The king's forbidden firmament, which was taking shape, started to give off an intimidating power. Kuai In's face was covered in wounds. His eyes were like 2 burning balls of flame. He gripped the blue horsefly tightly with its head pointed up. It's useless, Elder Su looked down expressionlessly. The crystal at his forehead was a pure blue and there seemed to be a faintly discernible ripple of a vast ocean, and the sound of waves coming from it. Elder Zu's Shin power was not strong, but it had a presence as vast as that of an ocean. He raised his hand. The faint sound of the waves suddenly grew stronger, like a storm forming above the ocean. Kuai Yan's vision blurred. He was suddenly surrounded by the angry waves of the ocean. Terrifying power came from all directions, pulling, twisting, and tearing. He had a hard time to keep his position. An ocean, it was truly an ocean. Kuai Yan was shocked. This wasn't an Yao art. Shin technique. The two words exploded in Kuai Yan's mind. A light flashed through Zheng Lianer's eyes. The other was very strong, but his Shin power wasn't pure. This was related to the path the other had taken. The merging of Shin power and Yao arts had formed a completely new kind of Shin technique. As expected of a member of the Yao Council of Elders, he was able to create such an unique Shin technique. It really was powerful. Yao arts were full of transformations to start with, and after Shin power was added, its flexibility was maintained while its power was dramatically increased. However, this new kind of Shin technique was not without its weaknesses. Its impurity was its greatest weakness. Zheng Lianer had cultivated Shin power for a long time, and knew that the purest Shin techniques did not have many complex transformations. Pure Shin power could make the simplest moves extremely powerful. However, this new kind of Shin technique was easier for Yao to learn. It was possible to see that the Yao had a breakthrough in the study of Shin power. If these people all cultivated Shin power, then there was great trouble. Zheng Lianer was secretly shocked. Looking at Kuai Yan struggling in the Shin art, her eyes flashed with light and she was about to attack. Kuai Yan suddenly shouted. The blue horsefly in his hand suddenly lit up. The serene blue light illuminated all of the ocean. Pew pew pew. Sharp bone spikes broke out of Kuai Yan's body. The bone spikes were about 5 cun long and the thickness of chopsticks. In a blink, bone spikes covered Kuai Yan's entire body. Then the bone spikes left Kuai Yan's body and floated around him. There was a point of white energy at the tip of every bone spike, so many that people's scalps prickled. Zheng Lianer's eyes flashed and she suppressed the urge to attack. Spear Hedgehog Mo physique. She hadn't thought that Kuai Yan, who had a nondescript appearance, was one of the Spear Hedgehog clan. The Spear Hedgehogs were natural experts in spears and other polearm weapons. What they were most famous for was the Spear Hedgehog Mo physique, one of the top Mo physiques that could use spear-type Mo skills to their true potential. And the blue horsefly in his hand was one of the top spear-type Mo weapons. Zheng Lianer's curiosity was immediately aroused. The blue horsefly flashed with blue light suddenly exploded into tens of thousands of blue fragments. These blue energy fragments were like an enormous school of tiny blue fish that swam in the ocean. The terrifying power of the ocean did not pose any difficulty for them. In the opposite side of the fish, the bone spikes that floated around Kuai Yan gathered towards his hand at a rapid rate. A bone spike spear that was formed from the bone spikes appeared in Kuai Yan's hand. The ferocious waves and the great pressure that came from all directions could not stop this from forming. The moment that the bone spike spear formed, the deep blue school of fish suddenly stilled. Kuai Ai widened his eyes. He ignored the water around him, following his intuition, and made a textbook and perfect spear stab with a twist of his waist. Chapter 728, Threats. The young Mo god and the old man simultaneously stopped and turned to look in the direction of the grave ghost mound. It seems that someone wants to get there ahead of us. The old man shook his head and said, let's go, our warm-up is finished after fighting for so long, we cannot let the Yao come to the Mo territories and reap the benefits, the young Mo god said lazily. The old man shook his head rapidly. Your Mo Shin temple is great and bright. Those old Yao have many people, only I am alone. Who are you trying to fool? You clearly are on the same side as Xiao Mo guest group. The young Mo god rolled his eyes. Are you in or out? Oh, all right, those that try to steal benefits ahead of others are the worst. The old man thought to himself for a moment and then immediately put on a murderous expression. The young Mo god clapped his hands and said righteously in agreement, exactly. The two immediately disappeared. The frightened people of Buzhou City sighed in relief, but then some of the experts who were sensitive immediately discovered the noise far away. Grave Ghost Mound. It's the Grave Ghost Mound. The crowd shifted. Some of the more daring people immediately flew into the sky towards the Grave Ghost Mound. The bone spike spear immediately created a great suction force like a whirlpool that gathered the blue fish-like energy fragments. Ripples radiated from the tip of the spear. The ripples had sharp thorny edges. The blue energy followed the ripples and gathered at the tip of the spear. The tip of the spear became so bright that people were unable to look directly at it. Those that saw the blue energy felt their soul shake. Hiss hiss hiss. A tsunami of hissing, each ripple with a frequency higher than the last. The blue energies seemed to be alive as they followed towards the lit-up spear point. Elder Zu's expression changed. His gaze was focused on that bit of blue light. Earth Ma weapon. The other actually wielded an Earth Mo weapon. Suddenly, he recalled that Xiao Moge had also forged 4 Earth Mo weapons in addition to the angel device raiment. If this was in the past, the creation of new Earth Mo weapons would attract much attention. But for the Yao elders that had successfully reached the doorway to Shen power, they had unconsciously dismissed the value of the 4 Earth Mo weapons and set their sights on the pseudo-Shen device. Yet when they directly faced the soul-stealing bright blue energy, a strong feeling of danger rose. Elder Su suddenly woke up. An Earth Mo weapon was still enough to be a threat to him. His clothing swayed despite the lack of wind. Elder Zu's face suddenly flushed as though he was drunk. His hands pressed down, and his shout was like thunder. Set. The ocean that had been full of ferocious waves suddenly became clear. The surface of the water was motionless, crystal clear like a sapphire. Within the enormous jewel, that blue light moved unusually slow. The pressure coming from all directions increased dramatically. Qian almost suffocated. His strong Mo physique was cracking under such pressure. He was experienced in battle, and had fought his way from the border of life and death innumerable times. He knew that this was the crucial moment. He unexpectedly closed his eyes, his mind completely serene. His right hand that gripped the bone spike spear now slid along the shaft to the end of the spear and then abruptly twisted. Snap! The bone spike spear suddenly exploded. The furiously spinning bone spikes were full of destructive power. Boom boom boom. The explosion of bone spikes tore a gap in the ocean water. A flow of blood came from Qian's mouth. He opened his eyes, which were unusually calm and bright. That bit of blue light had flown out through the opening created by the explosion. There was a thread of amusement at the corner of his mouth. Ever since he discovered the other cultivated Shen power, he had gambled on blue horsefly. What he gambled on was that the other had not cultivated Shen power for a long time. He gambled that blue horsefly was able to hurt the other. A dot of blue light flew out of the ocean water, and Elder Zu's face turned ashen white. Pressed, he also used his full power. Countless walls of water rose from the ocean to try to block this blue energy. However, this blue energy did not seem to be tangible and was not obstructed at all. The blue light flashed and arrived in front of Elder Su. Elder Zu's gaze met the blue light, and found a great suction come from the blue energy. He was unable to move. Shocked and hopeless, he shouted, "Save me!" Before he finished speaking, the blue energy pierced Elder Zu's forehead. Countless blue lights exploded from Elder Zu's head. Elder Zu's body melted like snow. Blue horsefly resumed its original appearance. Its light was dim and the body was covered in cracks. It fell from the sky and smashed to the ground into countless pieces. Qian also fell from the sky, his face paper white, and his breathing almost undetectable. A shout suddenly sounded in the air. A thread of fire suddenly flew out from the group of the Yao elders, targeting the unconscious Qian snap. The thread of fire suddenly exploded midair. A long sleeve wrapped around Qian Xianxia's serene voice sounded in everyone's ears. "It's the first time I have seen an honored elder of the Yao this shameless. You dare! You girl!" An elder pointed at Xianxia and shouted angry. Before he finished speaking, a crescent moon suddenly lit up behind his head. The crescent moon spun and his head separated from his body and dropped down with a roll. Tseng Lianer said serenely. You are so old, yet your temper is so fiery. Why? Tseng Lianer's attack came without any warning. Her attack intimidated all those present. Everyone felt a cold wind at their necks, and were shocked inside. Tseng Lianer's moves surpassed their imagination. Ever since they stepped into Shun power, everyone's power had grown immensely and all of them had been confident. They looked down on normal Sky Yao, marshals, and Fanshu. The only people they were wary of were the 3 Mo gods of the Emotion Temple. Who would have thought that a marshal with an Earth Mo weapon would take Elder Zu's life? Tseng Lianer's moves were even more uncanny and unpredictable. Elder Wang had died where he was. None of them had confidence that they would be able to dodge this move. Ming Yu's expression was grave as her Shun power rippled. Her presence continued to rise. She was like a blinding sun in the sky, giving off light that no one could look directly at. Her eyes were frosty as she said coldly, "This is how Xiao Mogu treats his guests?" Tseng Lianer's expression was composed but her heart sank slightly. That move just now had been a Shin technique she had comprehended not long ago. It was called the First Moon Strike. She saw the others' overbearing attitude and had wanted to intimidate them, so she had used this move. The First Moon Strike was powerful, but it also expended a great amount of Shin power. More than half of her Shin power was gone. What she had not expected was that while the other elders showed fear, Ming Yu did not have any fear at all. Tseng Lianer was surprised by the Shun power vibrations that Ming Yu gave off. It was much stronger than that Elder Su. If she was at full power, she was confident she would be a match, but right now, if she fought, her bluff would be exposed. Qinghua Shui had improved greatly, but hadn't cultivated Shin power. She was lacking too much compared to these elders, and could not help. Just as Tseng Lianer was becoming panicked, a cool voice sounded in the sky. "This is how I treat my guests." Ming Yu's pupils suddenly contracted. Just as the word sounded, a golden flame suddenly shot out of the ground and rapidly spread between Tseng Lianer and Ming Yu. A ruler-straight golden thread of fire was like a sharp knife that completely separated the two. "All those that cross the line will be killed." The cool voice was like a murderous autumn wind that blew into the hearts of the elders. Each of them felt a chill. Yet no one dared to take the words as a joke. This golden line of fire burned silently, yet the purity of the Shin power it contained shocked them. There was such pure Shin power in the world. Even Ming Yu stopped breathing for a moment. She was intimidated. Her expression changed slightly. She knew now that she had underestimated Xiao Mogu. The other's skill in Shin power far surpassed her predictions. In a moment, her expression recovered. Xiao Mogu was stronger than she had imagined, but she had the absolute advantage in terms of numbers. All of the elder around her cultivated Shin power. While each one individually was not as strong as Xiao Mogu, their collective power meant they had the upper hand. In a few moments, she considered the gains and losses. She secretly added Xiao Mogu's Shin power inheritance to their goals this time, other than the angel device raiment. If they could obtain Xiao Mogu's Shin power inheritance, she could completely perfect the Elder Council's Shin power. "Xiao Mogu, you want to become enemies with the Council of Elders?" Ming Yu didn't give up an inch and asked in a cold voice. Behind the line of fire, it was completely silent. At some unknown time, Tseng Lianer and Qinghua Shui had disappeared. "Xiao Mogu, while you are of unknown origins, you must have the blood of a Yao." Ming Yu was not demotivated, her tone determined and firm. "Right now is the time of great change in the world. Don't you want to accomplish something? The Council of Elders desires those with skill, and you are one that we need. If you are willing to enter the Council of Elders, I am willing to give up my own position and be your second in command. The Council of Elders has numerous core, resources, and people. The help they can give you is unimaginable. The faction that you have now will be completely in your command, and the Council of Elders will not interfere." The other elders heard this and all changed expression. Their gazes as they looked at Ming Yu were filled with shock and admiration. Inside the grave ghost mound, Zhou Mo couldn't help but admire Ming Yu as well. This woman was strong. If this was any other person, they would be moved by hearing these conditions. The power of the Council of Elders was so enormous it could not be matched. All of the Yao were under its rule. The only one that might be comparable was Kunlun. Tian Huan and the others were lacking slightly, and as for the Mo that were divided under the rule of warlords, no one could compare. Clap, clap, clap. Clapping suddenly sounded inappropriate at this time. A handsome and upright youth slowly entered people's view. It was the young Mo god, Yoshiyaku. He glanced at the line of fire on the ground, and his heart jumped. He did not show anything on his face except a lazy smile. I have heard long ago that Miss Ming is a great woman and a rarity among the Yao. You are just as the rumors say. So great. However, how can us Mo endure you Yao coming to our territory and allow you to dig at our foundations? Are you Mo god Yoshiyaku? It is an honor to meet you. A light flashed through Ming Yuye's eyes as she elegantly gave a bow. Ayaya, I would rather not meet such a powerful woman as you. Yoshiyaku said impolitely and immediately caused anger to appear on the faces of the elders around Ming Yuyi. Hey, Xiao Emogo, how about coming to the Emotion Temple? I'll give my position to you. Oh, right, our Emotion Temple doesn't have those rules. You can do whatever you want, come whenever you want. It is such a good place to waste away the time and wait for death. There's no other place like this. Qinghua Shui and Tseng Liana looked strangely at Zhou Mo Qian, who had just woken up, gaped with shock on his face. Chapter 729. The prologue to the feast. Zhou Mo was also slightly stunned but then became slightly smug. Soji was in such high demand. However, he wasn't the greenhorn Ji from the past that had just started out in the world. His smugness did not show one bit on his face, and his tone was filled with conflict and agitation as though he was making a greatly difficult choice. I need to consider this. Tseng Lianer and Qinghua Shui looked at Zhou Mo's strange expression. They heard this sincere voice and gaped. Actor? Definitely an actor. Kuai In's expression was puzzled. He didn't quite understand. There was nothing more that had to be said of the Council of Elders, and the Emotion Temple had leapt to become one of the factions in the Mo territories with the greatest potential. While it was unable to compare to the Council of Elders at present, the potential it displayed definitely would allow it to become a titan in the Mo territories. Invitations from two top factions, and he seemed to be joking around? Under Kuai In's stunned gaze, Zhou Mo hurried to keep setting up the Jinji. If he had been anxious before, then Zhou Mo was filled with confidence about the King's Forbidden Firmament. No, the King's Forbidden Firmament had such power just in its beginning form. He greatly anticipated the completed King's Forbidden Firmament. Golden Crow Camp had created something powerful. Thinking about that group of low-ranking forging Xiozha who lived at the bottom and did not have any ambition to being able to create such powerful Jinji now, Zhou Mo was filled with a sense of accomplishment. At this time, Mo Cloud Sea and Golden Crow Camp was extremely busy and moving at full speed. The battalions had finished assembling, and the atmosphere of Mo Cloud Sea was grave and murderous. An enormous gem-map was in front of them. Gong Suncha had a smile of a neighbor's boy on his face. In front of him, Shu Long, Ma Fan, Ajag, Sherdong, Wei Ran Yiling, and others were gathered and sitting in a row. Any of these people, if placed into another faction, would be able to be a main commander, but here, they did not dare to even slack off. Each of them had the unique murderousness of a battle general on their face. Their orderly clothing and their stern expressions had become the unique traits for Mo Cloud Sea battle generals. Bihan only managed his Sin battalion, and the entire battle general system of Mo Cloud Sea was managed by Gong Sun Cha alone. Gong Sun Cha liked a clean style, and this influenced everyone under him. Even people like Lei Peng would carefully groom themselves when they went to see Gong Sun Cha. The astounding victories had caused Gong Sun Cha and Bihan's fame to grow. They had made their way into the top ranks of battle generals in the world. The commanders present either had been promoted by Gong Sun Cha or taken hostage by him after being defeated. They in turn would not doubt his orders. It had been a long time since Mo Cloud Sea has made any big moves. Everyone's eyes burned with spirit. Other than Bihan, all of the battle generals were present. Just now, We have received information that Kunlun is participating in the fight over Xian Kong's territories. Gong Sun-cha said with a smile. Boom. The conference room shifted. Everyone had undisguised excitement on their faces. All of them understood what this meant. Darren, let us also fight. Lei Peng, who always feared the world wasn't chaotic enough, was the first to jump out. The eyes of Shi Dong, who was famed for his calmness, flashed with a burning fighting spirit. He murmured to himself, a good chance. The conference room was heated and noisy. Gong Sun-cha did not stop them. He knew that these people had been anticipating this opportunity for a long time. 2 hours ago, Kunlun finally could not resist and started their attack against Xian Kong Temple. This was a strong signal, a signal that all of the 4 realms had been waiting. The feast to divide Xian Kong Temple had started. They had all been waiting for this signal. Everyone knew that Xian Kong Temple was weak now. There had been more skirmishes in the past while around Xian Kong Temple's borders than over the past 1,000 years. But Gong Sun-cha did not act. He had worked hard to plan out how to gain the most benefit out of this great feast. Looking at the excited group, his lips couldn't help but curve into a small smile. For some reason, he suddenly thought of Xixiang. How was Xixiang right now? He didn't know. If Xixiang was here right now, these problems would not even be problems. Gong Sun-cha dazed off. He always admired how Xixiang would be at ease dealing with any matter, and then show a smug expression off afterwards. He gathered his thoughts and his gaze once again focused on these strong commanders. He took a deep breath. No matter what, he had to help Xixiang construct a good foundation. A strong foundation that could help Xixiang complete what he wanted. Burning fighting spirit was like a flame that was suddenly ignited and burned crazily. It spread through his calm eyes. The commanders felt Lil Miss fighting spirit. The noisy conference room immediately quieted. All of their postures straightened and looked hungrily at Gong Sun-cha for the orders. The plan has already been given to you. I believe that you have already read it over many times, so I won't go over it again. Gong Sun-cha's voice that was sharp and held a thread of craziness echoed in the conference room and caused everyone's burning fighting spirit to become even more fanatical. This time, our target is 56 Jia. They have all been marked. Not one more, not one less. Any faction that obstructs you is an enemy. No matter what you do, defeat them, massacre them, take them hostage. I only have one demand, speed. With the fastest possible speed, conquer the 56 Jia. Gong Sun-cha almost shouted at the end. Yes, Darren. Everyone shouted in response. Golden Crow Cloud Island had never been so busy before. It was filled with people, all of the core members of Golden Crow Camp gathered together. Other than this core group, there were also many outer organizations that made their expansion so enormous. There were many outer organizations in Mo Cloud Sea. They were mostly led by 1 or 2 core members, and their composition were the normal strength Xiozha that specialized in daily skills. Some simple talisman, Ling Dan and Ling food creation was done by these outer organizations. As Mo Cloud Sea's strength increased, the amount of items they needed also increased by an enormous amount. Golden Crow Camp alone was not enough, and so these outer organizations were born. The young people with outstanding talent had to pass through these outer organizations to increase their experience and master their respective field. Because experts taught spells and techniques, and they could find work easily in a relatively fair competitive environment, the number of these outer organizations increased drastically. Looking at the noisy crowd, the 2 masters' brows were tightly locked. Worry flashed across both pair of eyes. Compared to the well-trained and organized Golden Crow Camp, these outer organizations were almost unbearable to look at with their chaotic management. Thinking about Gong Sun-cha Darren's astounding plan, the 2 masters felt the pressure increase greatly. Behind them, more than 1,000 treasure ships were floating in the air, creating a spectacular scene. These treasure ships had been gathered by collecting all of the treasure ships that the businesses in Mo Cloud Sea used for transportation. This time, they really made a great investment. Suddenly, a paper crane flew in front of Master Sun Bao. Master Sun Bao took the paper crane and read. An excited blush came onto his face. He handed the paper crane to Ji Wei. Ji Wei was also similarly excited. The Golden Crow camp members that had been waiting below looked with wide eyes at the two. Master Sun Bao said gravely, "The battalions have already departed." Everyone's eyes lit up, and they shifted restlessly. Master Sun Bao used all of his strength to shout, his voice passing through the seal formations to every corner of the Cloud Island. "Everyone, take your teams, and board the treasure ships according to the order. We will follow behind the battalions. All of the Jinji forts that we build have their locations designated already. Once the battalions conquer the region, we need to use the fastest possible speed to set up Jinji forts. All of you listen up. The fastest, 169 Jinji fort. Not one less. Get ready to board. We depart immediately." The crowd started to move. It was a stampede of bodies. Many people were floating outside the grave ghost mound. All of their gazes were focused that ruler-straight golden line of fire on the ground. No one dared to cross it. Those with power could smell the strong scent of danger, and those even stronger were more astounded by the purity of the Shen power in the golden line. The news that the Yao Council of Elders had broken the secret of Shen power had been spread far and wide. The battle that had occurred just before had not escaped investigation. Shen power, this ancient and unfamiliar power, was like that ruler-straight golden line of fire. It became a new dividing line. The difficulty of obtaining the secrets of Shen power could be imagined. But a martial level had an Earth MO weapon could threaten a Shen power expert. This was the information taken from the battle just now. Maybe it wasn't all Earth MO weapons, but Grandmaster Xiao Yunhai's Earth MO weapons had proven this. Blue Horsefly had been destroyed, the Yin Clearly Chakrams had been exchanged, the value of the remaining 2 Earth MO weapons suddenly increased. For those marshals, the Angel Device Raiment wasn't something they could aspire to own. The only thing that could give them a feeling of safety were the last 2 MO weapons. In a flash, the last 2 Earth MO weapons were traded for. Ian looked at the 3 reverse shadow soul silkgrasses on his hands and was in a dilemma. The development of events had surpassed his imagination. Xiao Yunhai was actually Xiao Mogu. This unexpected result immediately caused him to end up on a train he could not get off. He didn't have the courage to swallow the 3 reverse shadow soul silkgrass. He wasn't so stupid to provoke such a terrifying enemy for just 3 reverse shadow soul silkgrasses. But Xiao Mogu's situation was terrible and surrounded by enemies. No matter how powerful the Jinji was, Xiao Mogu could not stay inside for his entire life. Once he left, he would face a situation where he was surrounded and attacked on all sides unless he threw his lot into a powerful faction. The 3 strands of reverse shadow soul silkgrass immediately became a hot potato. If he gave them to Xiao Mogu, he would offend either the Emotion Temple or the Yao Council of Elders. If he didn't give them to Xiao Mogu, and if Xiao Mogu didn't die, then he could not afford the risk that the other would come back and settle his debts. "Darren! Darren!" His subordinate charged in with a pale face. Looking at his subordinate's expression, Ian's heart turned cold. Qian Darren used Blue Horsefly to kill a Yao elder. Qian Darren is heavily wounded, and Blue Horsefly was destroyed. The subordinate's voice was trembling. Ian felt his head ring. Great trouble. A long time later, Ian's expression recovered from ashen white. He gritted his teeth. "Go. To the grave ghost mound." Since they had already offended the Yao Council of Elders greatly, and didn't have any relationship with the Emotion Temple, the only hope they had left was Xiao Mogu. Chapter 730, Silent Arrivals. Mo furiously continued to set down the Jinji, the light of spells on his hands flooding downwards. The complex Mo matrices and seal formations appeared on the ground with intimidating glows, blossoming and spread. In a trance, Mo threw everything happening on the outside to the back of his mind. His eyes were focused, and his mind was clear. All kinds of seal scripts and Mo matrices flashed across his mind, and then flew out of his fingers. The geography of the land, the river flows, the earth fire, the movement of the Yin energy, everything with 50 li was within his fingertips. Tseng Lianer woke up from her recovery meditation. While she had the sun seeds that Zhuemo had given her, she couldn't bear to use them. Things that could be used to replenish Shen power were treasures among treasures right now. She raised her head to look at Zhuemo in the sky with a serene expression. That figure gave off strong confidence. There was no pause or hesitation as he threw down the lights. Without realizing it, Tseng Lianer's gaze became even deeper. There seemed to be mist overlaid over her eyes. No one knew what she was thinking inside. Qinghua Shui's gaze was much simpler. Reverence and shock. But these feelings did not make her gaze heat up. It was still as serene as water. Kuai-N's face was pale. He was the most shocked of the group. Xiao Emogu, Xiao Yunhai, these two identities were not secrets now. But even if he was seeing the spectacular scene in front of him with his own eyes, he could not reconcile the two completely different personages and identities as the same person. Suddenly he shook from a chill. It was slightly cold. This unfamiliar feeling stunned him. Moments later he reacted. He was heavily wounded, and his mo physique was weak. He couldn't help but glance behind him out of the corner of his eyes. His eyes suddenly widened. At some unknown time, it had started to snow. Gray snowflakes fell and the world was completely gray. This was... He opened his hand and a gray snowflake landed in his hand. The bone-aching cold caused him to shudder, but then the gray snowflake quickly melted on his palm. A pure strand of Yin energy dissipated in the air. Yin energy. Kuai-N's gaze turned shocked as he suddenly turned his head to look closely at the figure in the sky, that person that was in his own world. He was able to make Yin energy into snowflakes. Kuai-N tried to quickly calm himself down. More puzzlement surged. It started to snow within a 50-li area. Large patches of feathery gray snowflakes slowly fell down. These snowflakes, what was their use? Just as everyone was shocked by Zhuemo's uncanny moves, no one noticed that a Gue had disappeared. A Gue appeared at the entrance to the Yin energy cave, where the ghost soldier had appeared at. Beside her was the black gold seal soldier that had come out at an unknown time. He was using his metal fists to bang on his metal chest. The black gold seal soldier had an expression of bravery. Ague, don't worry about those ghost soldiers. If one comes, he'll kill one and then eat it. Noticing Ague turning to look at him, his tone changed and he said fawningly, I will kill one, and have Ague eat one. After Ague is full, I will just take some. When he finished, he hugged his stomach with a grieved expression. He looked pitifully at Ague, tears welling up. Sister Ge, Lil Black is so hungry. Ague turned around, unaffected, and completely ignored him. Seeing that trying to be adorable was ineffective, the black gold seal soldier could only turn to face the cave entrance. He immediately became murderous and hungry. The cowardly will die from hunger, the brave will die from overeating. In order to die from overeating, Pia, a bare foot stepped onto his back, throwing him off balance. The black gold seal soldier fell face first into the cave, and a string of wails came from the cavern. Ague jumped down. Experts gathered on a cloud outside the grave ghost mound. Marshal D looked at the grave ghost mound in the distance and said emotionally, this Xiao Emogu is really an influential person. No matter where he goes, he creates a storm. Qin Ming nodded and said, yes, but it is unwise to become known everywhere. A hero would not stand under a collapsing wall. The situation right now is not a dead end, but it is a closed one. It is difficult to resolve. Tang Chen grimaced hearing this, you really are all idle. Let's first think about how to obtain Shen power. The smile on the others' faces faded, and their expressions became serious. They had received news that the other two Mo gods of the Emotion Temple were rushing over at full speed and would arrive tomorrow at the earliest. The Yao Council of Elders was another mountain in front of them, and this mountain was even bigger than the Emotion Temple. They looked at the Yao Elders. Each of them didn't bear to tear their gazes away from the ruler straight line of fire. Mingyu Yes public announcement had revealed their aims for Xiao Mo Guest Shen power inheritance. What is Xiao Mo Gu doing inside the grave ghost mound? Zhong Wentian asked. Qin Ming was thoughtful. Yes, what is he doing inside? Old Tang, what do you know about the grave ghost mound? Tang Chen shook his head. Not much. Qin Ming was slightly surprised. Everyone had fought together once and were familiar with each other's personalities. Tang Chen had left their group and returned to his family for familial reasons, but Qin Ming thought Tang Chen was a detail-minded and cautious person. This grave ghost mound was just a few hundred li from Buzhou City. It was so close that he was shocked that Tang Chen did not know it well. Tang Chen grimaced. It is not that I do not want to know, but this place is slightly strange. Strange? Everyone's attention was attracted. A place that a marshal called strange was most likely a bit strange. I've sent many people to explore the area, but not many have returned. I eventually made a trip personally. Tang Chen's expression was grave. The Yin energy inside is extremely dense with soul fiends and malicious ghosts. As I went deeper, the Yin energy increased in concentration and would suddenly boil. If one doesn't personally experience it, it is difficult to imagine the scene. All the Yin energy in the surroundings would boil at the same time. If you use MO skills in the slightest, it would cause the Yin energy to explode. I almost didn't make out that time. When he spoke of this, Tang Chen had an expression of fear. Everyone looked at each other with shocked expressions. Is there someone else powerful living in hiding here? Qin Ming couldn't resist asking. Tang Chen shook his head. I don't know, but ever since that time, I never went there again. I didn't expect that Xiao Emogu would run in, and I don't know what he is doing inside. At this time, a strong wave of vibrations came from the grave ghost mound. Everyone was startled and hurriedly turned. The grave ghost mound seemed to turn alive, the mountains and rivers moving. The rumbling could be heard from a distance, and the dark red earth fire formed pillars of fire. Even stranger was that the sky above the grave ghost mound was filled with gray snowflakes. A vibration that was hard to describe flashed across everyone's minds. The main peak of Xiankong Temple looked the same as before, but the fear and alarm on the faces of the disciples could not be disguised. The complete destruction of the Elder Core was a fatal blow to Xiankong Temple. If the world was not in chaos, they could enact a policy of isolation for decades, and Xiankong Temple might be able to recover. But right now, the world was in turmoil, and the balance between factions was changing. People saw the weakness of Xiankong Temple. There were continuous skirmishes at the borders of Xiankong Temple, and all kinds of conflicts were escalating in intensity. Those factions were like cunning wolves that were tearing off flesh from the enormous body of Xiankong Temple. All of the Xiankong Temple disciples realized that the sect was at the time of life and death. Kunlun has entered the fight. When the news came back, all of them had ashen expression. They all knew what this meant. The participation of Kunlun would be the straw that broke the camel's back, figuratively speaking. In reality, Kunlun was not a straw but a great mountain. As expected, on the afternoon of that day, Tianhuan, who had maintained their control, took over 4 jie of Xiankong Temple at lightning speed. Kunlun, Tianhuan, these two former allies of Xiankong Temple showed their bright butcher knives. All of the factions understood that the climax of the feast was about to arrive. Almost all the factions moved at the same time, their eyes red as they furiously attacked. The fighting was intense and ferocious. At the moment of life and death, many of the Xiankong Temple battalions had the thought of dragging their enemies into death with them. There were battles to the death everywhere. Their fierce and hopeless counterattack exploded. It displayed Xiankong Temple's thousands of years' worth of foundation and bravery, but also showed its weakness and lack of future. At the main peak right now, there were only the disciples that were in charge of chores. Any disciple with fighting ability had been sent to the front lines to stop the attacks of the enemy. People were afraid. Any disciple with any knowledge knew that the present dilemma of Xiankong Temple would not be resolved even if there were a few more Fanshu experts. When the entire world came to divide Xiankong Temple, it was fated for this sect that was thousands of years old to die. No one could stop the entire world, not even Kunlun. Once the situation formed, the momentum had given their fate a life of its own. The participation of Kunlun and Tianhuan extinguished the last bit of hope in the hearts of the Xiankong Temple disciples. What was most fatal was that they hadn't thought that Kunlun and Tianhuan would be so impatient. These two fatal butcher knives came so quickly. Ming Xin's mood was terrible. He did not want to die with the sect. The best choice right now was to follow another leader. Other than Xiankong Temple, Xiankong Realm had 9 other great temples, and they were all good choices. However, it was not possible to go throw himself with another sect with empty hands at this time. He thought of the Sutra Pavilion and the Diana Treasure Pavilion. A daring idea was unable to be suppressed. A harsh look flashed through his eyes. He needed to be fast. There probably were many that had the same idea. If he could get 1 or 2 treasures, he would naturally have a place to live in the future. After arriving at the decision, Ming Xian did not hesitate. Taking advantage of the dark, he sneaked to the Sutra Pavilion. The Sutra Pavilion was unusually silent today. A hint of anxiousness flashed across Ming Xin's mind. But he gritted his teeth and sneaked in. Usually, the Shu would guard this place, but they had all been summoned away. There were only Jinji left, but he was familiar with them. Carefully avoiding the Jinji, he finally entered the Sutra Pavilion and was extremely excited. But when he saw what was in front of him, he was struck dumb. Chapter 731. Act. The night was as dark as ink, thick clouds blocking the sun, and one couldn't even see their fingers. There was a blurry figure at the highest point on the main mountain peak of Xiankong Temple. The mountain wind was strong, and caused Bihan's cape to flap loudly in the wind. His frosty and cold face held a complex expression. He was familiar with every blade of grass and every tree here. In this place, he had grown up, learned to be a battle general, was held captive, and was humiliated. He was filled with hatred for this place. Countless times in his dreams, he had personally lit a great fire and burned this damned place into ash. But when this day truly arrived, when he stepped onto the main peak again, when the scene of his dreams was about to be realized, he didn't feel that pleasure at getting his revenge but an indescribable mix of feelings as he stared at the dark night and this familiar place. No one could save Xiankong Temple. Even if Jiangzhi came back from the dead, he would not be able to save Xiankong Temple. Bihan and Gong Suncha had both felt that Kunlun would soon make their move, and a daring plan had appeared. Gong Suncha's sharpness and insanity combined with Bihan's fiery tactics caused this plan to receive full support. Bihan leads Sin battalion and sneaked through the night to get close to the main peak without being detected. Almost all of the forces of Xiankong Temple were positioned on their borders to resist the invasion of other forces. Their center was left comparatively empty and undefended. For Bihan, who had lived in Xiankong Temple since his childhood, it was though there were no defenses at all. Once Kunlun entered the battle, all of Xiankong Temple would panic, and this was also when Xiankong Temple's main peak defenses would be at its weakest. Bihan, who had been hiding nearby, unhesitatingly bared his fangs. Bihan, who was familiar with every tree and flower, didn't even give the disciples of Xiankong Temple any chance to send a message before taking down all of Xiankong Temple's main peak. There wasn't anything left alive on the main peak of Xiankong Temple. Bihan's gaze cleared quickly of its daze and became cold again. He looked up at the sky and knew he could not afford to delay. He was not the only one that was hiding in the dark. The Sutra Pavilion and Diana Treasure Pavilion of Xiankong Temple's main peak held the wealth of Xiankong Temple accumulated through thousands of years. It was the most tempting and delicious part of this feast. The situation had developed so quickly that Xiankong Temple hadn't had the time to move this wealth away. All of the sects were targeting this fat piece of meat. Among the Xiankong Temple disciples that he had just killed, there were 6 that were spies from other factions. Soon, the elite experts of other factions would arrive, and it would not be so easy to leave then. Bihan looked deeply at this Diana holy ground that had stood for thousands of years. A jade box covered in seal scripts appeared on his hand. He did not hesitate and threw the jade box out. The jade box drew out a curve as it flew through the night sky, bam, and landed halfway up the mountain. The jade box immediately cracked. A dot of fire lit up from the jade box. The fire quickly spread at a mad speed towards the surroundings. In a flash, the middle of the mountain was covered in flames. The dark red flames danced furiously and consumed everything. This was a work from the two masters of Golden Crow Camp. Samadhi Firebox. This kind of 6th grade fire was stunningly power. Harvesting high-level fires from fire formations was one of Golden Crow Camp's best skills. The flames of the core members in Golden Crow Camp had all been upgraded a long time ago. 4th grade Golden Crow fire was too low grade for their present needs. Many sects had Samadhi fire, and using it here would not expose their identity. In a flash, the flames consumed the entire peak. The crimson-red tongues of fire shot up and licked the sky. The entire sky was dyed red, and even the clouds were unable to. The lashing tongues of flame. The sky was penetrated by the hot flows of air. Among the flames, Bi-Han led the silent and puppet-like Sin battalion to a soundless withdrawal. The Yin energy underground was thick and a passageway stretched forward. The concentration of Yin energy inside the cave was multiple times that of above. Waves of Yin energy came out of the deep hole. The black gold seal soldier's eyes flashed with eerie light. He banged on his chest as he comforted Egu, shamelessly complimenting himself. Sister Egu, don't worry, Lil Black is very strong now, and can easily capture those ghost soldiers. He suddenly stopped and his eyes lit up. Ague silently stopped walking. Suddenly, the black gold seal soldier gave a sly smile and his body smashed towards the right abruptly. Bam! His smash was extremely strong and something immediately flew out. The black gold seal soldier's hands and feet were on the ground like a wild beast as he shouted out. He stretched out his neck, his face twisted as he howled at the top of his lungs, "Oh, oh, oh," singing to the sky with a curved neck. 1. He was lightning fast and didn't even leave behind an afterimage in the air. Whoosh, he appeared behind that thing. Bam, his right leg was like a whip that viciously struck the gray shadow. The great power whipped the gray shadow into the air. The black gold seal soldier's eyes were bright as he shot out again. He suddenly appeared in the air, meeting the incoming gray shadow and struck another blow with his leg. Bam, bam, bam. There was a fast rattle of bone-aching sound that would cause people's scalps to prickle. Suddenly, his figure flashed again and he appeared next to the gray shadow. His right hand was like metal pincers that clasped around the thing's neck. The series of movements had been lightning fast. The black gold seal soldier gripped the other's throat and pulled it in front of him. After examining it for a while, he was slightly puzzled. This is the ghost soldier? The flames in the eyes of the ghost soldier were dim as though it had been greatly affected by the storm of attacks and hadn't recovered yet. The bones of the ghost soldier were covered in cracks and it was breathing faintly. Suddenly, the black gold seal soldier's nose jerked and his eyes lit up. Shin power! But his face quickly fell. He dragged the ghost soldier in front of Ague and said reluctantly, "Sister Ague here." Ague quickly sucked all of the Shun power from the ghost soldier's body. The black gold seal soldier's power had grown greatly after he swallowed 2 balls of light while Zwa Mo had forged the Earth Mo weapons. He rampaged around underground. All of the ghost soldiers that he met were unable to fight back. The two advanced more than a dozen li and killed 6 ghost soldiers. Ague absorbed 3 threads of Shin power and the black gold seal soldier also absorbed 3. After absorbing the threads of Shun power, the black gold seal soldier became even more powerful. He was also able to automatically take in Yin energy from the surroundings and could hide perfectly in it. After absorbing Shun power, the purple fire in her eyes was brighter. The Yin energy in the surroundings continuously flowed into her body and then permeated out of her body. The Yin energy that came out would carry away threads of black energy. The black gold seal soldier suddenly exclaimed in shock, "Sister Ege, you seem to have become more beautiful. That's great. I have to ask for a reward from Big Bro. If I don't ask for a reward for such a good thing, I really can't live up to my name." The scars on Agui's face were much fainter and her exposed skin much smoother. What was most attractive was still her perfect pair of feet. Her bare feet at present had an additional luster like that of jade or porcelain. They were untouched by dust despite stepping on the ground. The black gold seal soldier touched his face and then his head. He muttered, "Why didn't I become more handsome? It's not fair, this really isn't fair." I want to become handsome. I want to become the handsomest seal soldier, and then pursue the tastiest ling beasts. The black gold seal soldier's wails echoed underground. The purple fire in Agui's eyes became less heated and more gentle. I really lost out. I have to get something out of Big Bro to comfort my wounded soul. The black gold seal soldier's mouth constantly ran. Suddenly, his gaze met his own hand and he stilled. The script on his hand was peerlessly clear. This pattern was very powerful. It was not like a seal script, nor a MO matrix, it seemed extremely old. Even Big Brother was unable to tell what it was. In the past, it had been very blurry, but now it was extremely clear. Each stroke was clear. However, he clearly remembered that this pattern didn't have any black parts. One line of the pattern on his hand had turned black. He inspected it a few times and couldn't make heads or tails of it. He could only give up. However, he immediately became excited. This hand's pattern had always been his strongest killing move. While he didn't understand what pattern this was, he could feel the great power contained in the hand pattern. Have a strong one come. Have a strong one come. Let ye try this out. The black gold seal soldier yearned to try. At this time, deep in the cavern, a deep growl came. The Yin energy in the cave suddenly became ferocious and turbulent as it twisted and headed at the duo. The black gold seal soldier was aching for a fight and was overjoyed. He changed forward into the furious wave, heading in headfirst like an arrow. The purple fire in Agui's eyes suddenly lit up. The wave of air blew away the sand and rocks around her, yet Agui didn't move at all. Agui's bare feet lightly danced on the ground before she disappeared. Bam bam bam. Loud sounds of collisions entered Agui's ears. When Agui arrived, she only saw the black gold seal soldier fighting intensely against a skeleton covered in flames. The air vibrated with the exclamations of the black gold seal soldier and the angry howls of the fire skeleton. If Swarimo was here, he would definitely recognize that it was a sacrificial altar under the black gold seal soldier and the fire skeleton. At the edge of the sacrificial altar, there were 10 totem pillars carved with ghosts and monsters. They were continuously spouting pure and thick Yin energy out. The Yin energy followed the passages of the sacrificial altar to gather at a bulge at the center. The Yin energy climbed up the steps. There were 4 stone statues with grotesque fasts and fangs guarding the 4 corners of the platform. The statue on the west was already shattered to leave behind a pile of rubble. From the fragments, it was possible to see that this was a statue of a skeleton. At the center of the statues where the Yin energy gathered, a gray set of armor stood silently. The feet of the armor continuously absorbed Yin energy that was then spat out through its mouth. All of the Yin energy underground came from here. The bone armor was like jade. After being permeated for countless years by the Yin energy, it was astoundingly fine to touch. Small pieces of bones were layered together and held in unique beauty. The empty eyes of the bone armor carried the weight of the ages as they soundlessly stared at Agu. 1. The black gold seal soldier mangled the poem that's a song of the goose. Chapter 732, King's Forbidden Firmament. He is setting up Jinji, the chief Mo god said coolly. The rhinoceros Mo god stood silently next to him. The two did not have any attendants with them. After changing their appearance, no one recognized them. Having disguised themselves and ordering subordinates to act as body doubles to mislead their enemies, no one knew that they had secretly arrived. I already told Third to delay the old man and the Yao Council of Elders when we make our move, the rhinoceros Mo god said gravely. We need to be fast and capture Xiao Emogu before they can react. The chief Mo god's eyes were cold. The angel device raiment is definitely on him. As long as Xiao Emogu is in our hands, we have the upper hand. The rhinoceros Mo god nodded. He glanced at the grave ghost mound. I will break the Jinji. His voice was hushed but his tone was filled with confidence. In his view, Xiao Emogu's idea of setting up Jinji was laughable. The Jinji might be strong, but it definitely could not stop them. Only Shen Power Jinji could stop Shen Power experts. Seng Lianer's Shen power has not yet recovered, and she is not a threat, the chief Mo god schemed. Xiao Mogu is setting up Jinji and has definitely used a great amount of energy. The only worry is that ugly servant of his. The rhinoceros listened silently with a composed expression. Do not hold anything back. The chief Mo god's gaze did not leave the grave ghost mound. This battle will determine the future of our emotion temple. If we succeed, we will not need to fear the Yao Council of Elders. I know, the rhinoceros Mo god said gravely. Act now. Before the words finished, the chief Mo god's figure disappeared. The figure of the rhinoceros Mo god flashed, and he silently appeared high above the periphery of the grave ghost mound. He took a deep breath. All the Shun power in his body vibrated. He knew that with this attack, his identity would be exposed to everyone. Victory and defeat was all in this blow. He eliminated the stray thoughts in his mind, his hands slowly raised up high, and his eyes widened. Boom! A stunning presence erupted like a volcano, and was no longer concealed. It was as bright as the sun. The powerful Shin presence spread across all of the grave ghost mound and the surrounding 100 li like a storm. The suffocating presence was like a roaring wasteland beast from the ancient era. Those Mo of average power felt their legs weaken and almost give out. Blood-red hoops suddenly wrapped around the right arm of the rhinoceros Mo god. The rhinoceros Mo god opened his eyes. The 5 fingers on his right hand spread out as he pressed his open palm downwards. The Yin energy that multiplied suddenly in ferocity had nearly caught Swa Mo off guard. However, his reaction was fast and he immediately adjusted, his hand movements changing. The Yin energy was like a coiling gray dragon that silently moved along the Mo matrices and seal scripts already set up. Everywhere it passed, the Mo matrices and seal scripts lit up. The Yin energy was absorbed by the Mo matrices and seal scripts and then turned into gray snowflakes. The snow grew even heavier. Even someone as strong as what Mo couldn't help but show weariness after setting up Jinji for such a long time. He threw a sun seed into his mouth and felt as the pure Shen power continuously rejuvenated his body. When his strength returned, the light in his eyes grew brighter. Looking at the mountains, rivers, and flowing earth fire within 50 li and the packed seal scripts and Mo matrices, a smug expression appeared on his face. Gu is really a genius. However, he would only know the effect of the Jinji after activating them. The strange and heavy gray snow had already been noticed by the experts gathered outside. Numerous pairs of eyes focused on the grave ghost mound behind the line of fire. Zwermo took a deep breath. He looked down at the Jinji below and his eyes flashed with a stunning light. Since this was the case, then let it be activated. At the sudden appearance of the rhinoceros Mo god, the old man, Ming Yu Yi and the other people all changed expression. The old man's hair flew up as his Shen power reached a peak. His body was covered in a layer of terrifying black light, his muscles bulging. He suddenly grew in height, his figure multiplying in size, his body seemingly made from metal as it turned black. He stepped forward, his back arched as he threw a punch layered in black light at the rhinoceros Mo god in the sky. He shouted thunderously, "Get down here!" A cold light flashed through Ming Yu's eyes. The light blue reeds in her hand danced at an unique rhythm and snapped. A blue butterfly flew out. Its beautiful wings flapped in the air and it disappeared. "Old elder, you really have a temper." The young Mo god giggled. Yet there was no humor on his face, only a stern expression at the gravity of the situation. The bloody light on his body was thick, and his Shen power was clearly being channeled to its limits. Within the bloody light, blood-thorny vines flew out. The bloody vines danced in the air like snakes with thorns. They crisscrossed in the air and covered the sky. Dozens of blood vines twisted eerily as they gathered in one direction. They immediately formed a wall of vines that blocked the punch from the old man. Boom! The blood vine wall immediately was penetrated. The young Mo god seemed to have expected this. A second and a third vine wall appeared at almost the same time. The punch passed through the second blood vine wall and smashed into the third, but it was halted. At the same time, the blood vines suddenly bloomed with bright flowers. The flowers withered at a visible rate, the petals falling and dancing in the wind to form a mist surrounding the figure of the blue butterfly. The blue butterfly lightly flapped its wings. The bright blood mist was unable to move forward. Yet the blood mist thickened and surrounded the blue butterfly. Pop, pop, pop. A rattle of explosions came from within the bloody mist and, abruptly, the bloody mist exploded. Mingyu's expression changed slightly. She unhesitatingly cut off her connection to the butterfly. The blood mist in the air exploded, a ring of bloody light spreading ferociously into the surroundings like a storm. All of the people who had approached were caught off guard and were thrown into the air as though they were hit by a rampaging bull. Eerie blood-colored patterns suddenly appeared on the face of the young Mo god. Blood seeped out of these beautiful patterns. He looked both eerie and terrifying. His face was pale, his clothing tattered, and his figure wavering and about to fall. He had managed to stop these two users of Shin power, but it had cost him greatly. Ayaya, being cannon fodder isn't a great feeling. He muttered to himself as his thin body floated weakly in the air. At the same time, a stunning yet familiar wave of air came towards his back. An accomplished smile appeared at the corner of his lips. Of the three, the chief Mo god was the strongest, but in terms of how domineering one's power was, the rhinoceros Mo god was the best. Nothing could stand to the Mo god's brute hand. He had completed his mission. The young Mo god seemed relieved of a great burden. He relaxed his body and allowed it to drift with the furious flow shockwave's power like a falling leaf. He did not care about the blood that was seeping out of the patterns on his face. Yet his relaxed body suddenly froze. In the next moment, the young Mo god forcibly twisted his body and turned back to gaze at the grave ghost mound. His eyes widened and he paled. The grave ghost mound that had been dark and shrouded in gray snow suddenly lit up as though there were 10,000 lanterns. The Mo matrices and seal scripts continuously lit up at a stunning rate as though water was flowing through them. In a flash, the grave ghost mound seemed to appear illuminated as though it was day. The exquisite and complex seal scripts and Mo matrices lit up in succession. The land within 50 li seemed to be covered with a bright and fine spiderweb. The endless bright seal scripts illuminated the curves of the landscape. The gray snowflakes floating in the air were dissonant to the beauty below, but no one could ignore them. Yet at this time, no one was attracted by the beauty of the grave ghost mound. Everyone's gaze could not move away from the godly figure in the air as they unconsciously stopped breathing. Mo god's brute hand. Everyone seemed to see a great mountain crashing down from the sky. A brutal and suffocating power that smashed down as it robbed people of hope. Under the suffocating pressure of the Mo god brute hand, the beautiful grave ghost mound was like a beautiful but fragile work of art. This hand was enough to flatten all of the grave ghost mound. Among the gray snowflakes, Mo suddenly raised his head. He only just detected the approaching furious and intimidating power after he activated the Jinji. Mo had jumped in fright. This attack had given up on all technique and skill, it was just pure power. This was the first time he saw such an unique Shin technique. While most Shin techniques were simple and utilized little skill, he had never heard of such a simple and direct method. He had once seen the rhinoceros Mo god during the fight against the Xian Kong Temple Elder Corps. He had estimates of the rhinoceros Mo god's power, but his mind still wavered at the power of this hand. But in the next moment he suddenly reacted and knew the other's intentions. The other wanted to break his Jinji. Mo's little heart immediately stopped wavering, and his expression became vicious. The gaze he threw up was one of scorn, as he spat out a disdainful sound. It was as though he was displeased that he was being challenged in his most accomplished field. Ever since Ji started learning seal formation, the turtle formation defense style had never been defeated. It had great accomplishments, and you definitely hadn't lived in Sky Moon Jie before? If there were people inside the grave ghost mound, people would be shocked to find that the scene inside was completely different than what they saw outside. The seal scripts and Mo matrices on the ground were not stationary but moved as though they were alive. The light from the ground suddenly grew. Mo's eyes grew brighter, all of the humor on his face disappearing and leaving behind only focus and concentration. Floating in the air, Zhuomo's face that was not handsome flashed with an indescribable light. Even the suffocating pressure, oh God, brute hand, that was howling down at the ground could not steal his glory at this moment. Come. He suddenly spread his arms. The light under his feet brightened. The flowing seal scripts and mo matrices stilled. And then they seemed to have received a summons, each of them leaving the ground and floating in the air. There were 18,000 parts, and more than tens of thousands of seal scripts and mo matrices involved. The combined seal scripts and mo matrices that numbered in the hundreds of thousands and of various colors and shapes all flew into the sky. Looking from afar, in that moment, there were millions of dots of light above the grave ghost mound. They were bright and like a mist. The scene was so spectacular that words could only describe a tiny part of it. Some stopped and floating in the air, others continued to rise, moving up and down in a staggered fashion. The gray snowflakes did not continue to fall but floated silently. Time seemed to be frozen by this indescribable beauty. What also stopped was the sky of the grave ghost mound. King's forbidden firmament. Chapter 733, Battlefield. In the middle of the night, the sky above the grave ghost mound was illuminated by a deluge of light. Zhuomo's figure with his arms spread wide seemed to be a ruler looking down at his realm. The pride and an ease in his manner spoke of absolute control was clear to all those below him in that frozen moment. Even the bright lights could not mask his grandeur. When time seemed to freeze, a blood-colored handprint was frozen soundlessly in the air. Even while it was bound motionlessly in the air, that bright red handprint would still make people feel the powerful, vicious, and brutal presence. Mo God's brute hand? No one had thought that the Mo God's brute hand, that had drew at the energies of the universe and overwhelmed the world and caused a tsunami of ferocious power, was a bright red handprint no larger than their own. When the Mo matrices below lit up, the rhinoceros Mo God felt danger. Yet everything that happened next surpassed his imagination. The destructive power, the furious wave of power he had released, stopped without any delay. Seeing the Mo God's brute hand silently stopped in the air, he even stilled. How was it possible? Even if his Mo God's brute hand was stopped, even if the Mo God's brute hand was destroyed by the other's Shin technique, he would not be so surprised. But this strange stillness in front of him surpassed the bounds of his knowledge. Arms spread, Zhuomo's eyes suddenly lit up. His right arm swayed slightly as his hand swept out. He shouted clearly, "Turn!" The surrounding crowds woke up as Zhuomo's voice seemed to reverberate inside their minds. The bright rain of light above the grave ghost mound slowly revolved with Zhuomo as the center. The seal scripts and Mo matrices floating in the air woke up and moved around. When hundreds of thousands of bright patterns moved, everyone changed expressions. Streaks of light formed and were destroyed. Even those that were skilled in Mo matrices could not identify any pattern. It was too complex. Yet at this time, no one was able to shout in time, and those that were stronger found a faintly discernible figure within the vortex of light. The chief Mo God. Even the stupidest person could guess this person's identity at this time. The chief Mo God was in a dilemma. The Jinji in front of him was eerie and strange. The seal scripts and Mo matrices around him each gave off different kinds of power. When these powers mixed together, it was like a power bog. He wasn't able to move. No matter what Shin technique he used, it would be consumed and merge with this strange power bog. Damn it. The sickle Mo matrix on the chief Mo God's face was bright and clear, showing the fury he felt at this moment. However, he was a decisive person, and knew that he could not succeed even with the help of the others. It was more important to save himself in this moment. He immediately channeled Shin power through his entire body to protect it. At this time, the surrounding Mo matrices and seal scripts suddenly spun. He felt his breathing choke off and his body was restrained. Innumerable power flows spun around him, cutting, twisting, and grinding at him. This caused the Shun power inside him to be quickly expended. No matter how he struggled, he could not break free of the restraint. Only now did he understand the true meaning of this Jinji. It used an abnormal amount of turbulent power flows to turn the entire Jinji area into a power graveyard. Any kind of power when put in this power graveyard would be broken up and assimilated. Just as though it was trying to prove his prediction, the blood-colored fingerprint that was motionless above his head quickly melted, grew smaller, and then disappeared. Which monster thought of such a monstrous method? The fury in the chief Mo god's eyes disappeared and a thread of terror replaced it. He knew the true meaning of the Jinji, but he still did not know how Xiao Mo Gu controlled the astounding number of power flows. The pressure of the Jinji against him grew even greater, and his Shen power was used up at an even faster rate. The chief Mo god knew that if he did not make a decision now, he would most likely be forever restrained in this freakish Jinji. Viciousness flashed through his eyes. He suddenly bit his tongue. The sickle Mo matrix on his face turned from bright red to gray-white. His full face thinned eerily. He stared viciously at Suemo and gritted out, "Xiao Mo Gu, either you will die or I will die." Before he finished, his figure slowly faded at a visible rate until he disappeared. The rhinoceros Mo god detected the chief Mo god going all in immediately. Shocked, he also reacted quickly. He knew that the mission had failed this time. Xiao Mo Gu was stronger than they had imagined. He looked with lingering fear at the youth in the middle of the bright glittering rain. A hint of relief rose. Fortunately, he had not been trapped in that fatal Jinji. Taking advantage of the other people not having recovered from the shock, he suddenly appeared behind to Yoshiyaku and grabbed him. His left hand suddenly exploded into a bloody mist and covered the pair. When the bloody mist dissipated, the figure of the two were gone. The fighting on the ground did not affect what occurred underground. The fighting underground was similarly intense. The black gold seal soldier and the fire skeleton were fighting intensely. His strength having grown, the black gold seal soldier had the upper hand, yet the fire skeleton had the advantage of home territory and used special abilities that forced the battle into a stalemate. This displeased the black gold seal soldier. The screams and nattering of the black gold seal soldier echoed over the entire sacrificial altar. "You trash bones, ye can smell the rot coming off you. You still can't give up after being buried for so many years? Be obedient and let ye help you move on, you can earn some good karma. It is your greatest fortune to come to Yes' stomach. So many beautiful beasts beg for it but cannot get it, come come come." In his eyes, the fire skeleton that possessed pure Shen power was like an extremely high-quality slab of braised ribs. Interspersed among the endless nattering was the sound of slurping and swallowing. The fire skeleton was not of low intelligence and would occasionally give out furious howls. Suddenly, the fire skeleton froze. A hand covered in purple energy passed through its forehead. All of the flames suddenly disappeared. The bones immediately lost their light. Bam! The skeleton immediately turned to bone powder and landed on the ground. The purple fire in Agui's eyes were shockingly bright now and seemed to want to emerge from her body. The death Shen power inside the fire skeleton was multiple times stronger and purer than the ghost soldier they encountered outside. The Shen power of the ghost soldier was like a thin stream, and the fire skeleton's Shen power was a raging river. The black gold seal soldier was about to cry. The braised ribs had flown away. "Ah, all of you come, ye wants you to come out?" The grieving black gold seal soldier shouted as he charged to the highest level of the sacrificial altar. Snap, snap, snap. The other three status immediately shattered. Three monsters appeared in front of him. One was a monster with a sheep head, one had a bull head, and one with a hawk head. The black gold seal soldier wasn't afraid. His eyes bright as he shouted, "Mine, mine, all mine." Hearing this, Suemo, who had just arrived at the entrance, almost tripped. He sweated inside. Why does this sound slightly like G? Having eliminated the threat of the Emotion Temple, Zuomo's mind relaxed. He was confident in the power of the king's forbidden firmament. Only just now had he found that Agui was missing. His face paled, and then hurriedly came in search of her. Seeing Agui safe and unharmed, a rock in his mind landed. When his gaze turned towards the highest level of the sacrificial altar, his body shook, and his eyes gave off light. The shadow of the fight that had occurred a few days ago faded from people's memories. One side of the fight had been proven to be Kunlun Sword Xiu, and had cultivations near Fanshu level. This new cast a shadow over this peaceful city. Kunlun, even in the Mo territories, all knew of them. No matter how the Mo disliked Kunlun, they could not refute its great power. In these chaotic times, Kunlun had become even more powerful, unlike Xian Kong Temple, who had collapsed, and Shixian, who was declining, and Kunlun's name caused even more fear in their enemies. Lin Qian had astounding talent and was an outstanding successor. The sect's inner circle was unusually close-knit. When compared to other sects, this made Kunlun even more terrifying. Even the Mo that were far from the front lines had expressions of anxiety and fear when they discussed Kunlun. Yet there were many pieces of popular news recently that attracted people's attention. The Mo Shin Temple had been defeated at the Grave Ghost Mound. This was the hottest topic of the moment. The Mo Shin Temple had once been thought of one of the factions most likely to unite all of the Mo. However, no one paid attention to the losers. All of the Mo territories were discussing one name, Xiao Emogu. Xiao Yunhai was Xiao Emogu. Even though the major factions had remained silent on this topic in an unspoken agreement, the angry shout of the chief Mo god had informed everyone when he retreated. If Xiao Emogu in the past was thought of one of the strongest in the younger generation and an upcoming talent, then no one thought that now. No one paid any more attention to the fight that had occurred a few days ago. But what no one knew was that there was a great battle occurring deep underground outside the city. 30 li under the ground, there was a cocoon of blood about the height of a person. Blood seeped out from the god-killing blood sword and flowed towards the blood cocoon. It flowed along the passages of the blood cocoon and entered Wei Sheng's body. Wei Sheng's own blood flowed out through another passage and permeated the god-killing blood sword. There wasn't even one drop of Wei Sheng's own blood in his body. Every droplet of blood was replaced by the blood of the warriors and great fighters that the god-killing blood sword had drank as it had killed them. Through the ages, it had drank the blood of countless warriors. The blood was truly the blood of heroes. It contained the power, belief, and hate of these warriors before death, and also pure and stunning power. Each droplet was like a great poison. If this was any other person, each and every droplet would be fatal. These warriors' belief were so strong that any normal soul would be rendered into dust. In the end, there would only be one result: the destruction of the body. Wei Sheng did not die even though all of his blood had been exchanged for this poisonous hero's blood. Because he was Wei Sheng. His power might not be strong enough, but his resolve was not lacking compared to any other person. His body became a battlefield where intense fighting was occurring on every inch. A battlefield where he would either win or die. Chapter 734, Ancient Shin Device. Zhua Mo was quick. Just having gained comprehension of a new attack in the king's forbidden firmament, Zhua Mo attacked with a killing move. A golden light suddenly appeared on his hand. He slightly reached out and pushed at the cow-head monster. A golden handprint left his hand. If the rhinoceros Mo god saw this handprint, he would be so stunned his eyes would bulge out in surprise. Other than being made out of gold-colored light and not blood-colored light, it was the exact same as his. Mo god's brute hand. No matter if it was the chief Mo god or the rhinoceros Mo god, they would not expect that the core and the strongest part of the king's forbidden firmament was not the restraining aspect but the king. Inside the Jinji, Zhua Mo was the king of all. He was the strongest and the central part of the Jinji. All the changes of the Jinji, every minuscule change or minute action would pass into his mind. Zhua Mo had a general understanding of the restrained Mo god brute hand. His attack was at least 80% similar. However, he cultivated the Sun Shin power, and what left his hand was a golden handprint. The vicious presence was lesser, but a strong and fierce presence was greater. The Yin energy underground was astoundingly thick, and Zhua Mo's Sun Shin power was both yang and strong. With this attack, It was like hot water in snow. A hint of fear flashed through the eyes of the bull-headed monster. The terrifying power contained in the little golden handprint made him feel great shock. He retreated, but a purple hand suddenly penetrated through his head. Zhuemo and Agui were in perfect coordination. Zhuemo's attack was astounding and thunderous to shock the other's mind. Agui was ghostly, and her one-hit one-kill preference for attacking vital areas was perfectly suited to coordinate with Zhuemo. Just like the previous bull-headed monster, Zhuemo and Agui finished the hawk-headed monster with a combo of gold and purple energy. After absorbing the Shin power of the two monsters, the brutal purple energy in Agui's eyes gradually dimmed, but a faint mark appeared on her forehead. Zhuemo's mind moved. Was this the undying Shin seal? Thinking of the old man's words, Zhuemo hurriedly took out the scab fragrance. Agui seemed to smell the scent of the scab fragrance, and a hint of desire appeared in her eyes. Zhuemo handed the scab fragrance to Agui. Each scab fragrance was about the size of a bean, each a different shape, and gray-white in color. When it was taken out, the entire place was filled with its fragrance. This was an unique and indescribable fragrance. Even Zhuemo couldn't help but swallow. The black gold seal soldier stretched out his neck and stared at the scab fragrance in Agui's hand. He appeared as though he forgot about the sheep-headed monster in front of him, and it was possible to see drool glittering at the corner of his mouth. The sheep-headed monster also stopped and stared at the scab fragrance in Agui's hand. Agui directly swallowed the scab fragrance. The black gold seal soldier wailed grievously with a pained expression. He turned and stared hatefully at the sheep-headed monster as he blasted out, "Mine?" Not having recovered from the distraction, the sheep-headed monster was beaten down by the black gold seal soldier. Zhuemo watched for a while. He felt that the black gold seal soldier didn't need any help, so he moved his gaze away. After Agui swallowed the scab fragrance, she immediately sat down in lotus position, and her body occasionally flashed with purple light. Agui's expression was calm, and Zhuemo's worries eased slightly. His gaze once again focused on the bone armor on the platform. With a flash, he appeared above the bone armor. Examining it up from close, he increasingly felt the extraordinary nature of the bone armor. This sacrificial altar was located at a special place. There was the mouth to a yin vein under the sacrificial altar. Even normal bone armor would be completely transformed after being immersed in yin energy for tens of thousands of years like this, and become outstanding. The material of this armor itself was extraordinary, even though Zhuemo could not recognize what kind of bone it was made from. The sacrificial altar was a product of the ancient era, and it was at least 10,000 years old. According to the golden leaf, the grade of a sacrificial altar was related to its size, but it was not an absolute rule. Many unique tribal sacrificial altars would not pursue grandness and vastness. However, there was one point that was always true: the guardian statues. A sacrificial altar that had guardian statues meant that this altar was extremely important to its tribe. The ancient era was too far removed from the present, and Zhuemo's knowledge of the time mostly came from the gold leaf and the memories that Wang Lin had left him. The gold leaf was cryptic, and many of Wang Lin's memories had become blurred through the passage of thousands of years. The materials of the ancient era were very different from the present. That was the era where wasteland beasts rampaged, and rare materials littered the ground. This material that was able to remain until the present would be even more extraordinary. Each bone was like a gray crystal, clear and glowing. This yin vein was clearly enormous, and the amount of yin energy it contained was stunning. The sprouting yin energy was a flow that continuously washed the bone armor. Zhuemo was slightly unused to the dense yin energy. Unlike the other objects of that time, the bone armor's design as unusually fine. The small bone pieces were ground thin and layered together like feathers. What was most attention-grabbing was the two short daggers inserted at the arms. Unlike the crystal-like texture of the other bone pieces, the short bone knives were completely snowy white without any flaw. Even Zhuemo felt a chill staring at the strange and eerie curves. Zhuemo reached out to the bone armor. Just as he was about to touch the armor, There was a whoosh, and a great pain came from his fingertip. Zuomo's eyes widened and his expression was shocked. He put his finger in front of his eyes. There was an extremely thin wound at the tip of his finger. Zuomo's shock increased. He knew just how strong his current body was. Even normal flying swords would shatter if they stuck him, and they wouldn't even manage to wound him. It was an energy blade made from Yin energy. Yet what shocked Zuomo was not the Yin energy blade, but he realized why the bone armor was placed at the sacrificial altar. It was a Shin device. This was a Shin device left behind from the ancient era. This was a true Shin device. Zuomo could not suppress the joy on his face. He actually had managed to encounter such a fortuitous matter. The bone armor was pure Yin in quality and not suited to him, but very suited to Agui. The undying Shin power that Agui had was a kind of death energy. The bone armor also contained death energy, and the two were a match for each other. Having woken up, Agui silently appeared next to Zuomo, her eyes focused on the bone armor. Zuomo felt her move and turned around. The mark on Agui's forehead had become clearer. It was a knotted mark. The faint purple chains formed in unique knot. Agui seemed to have become prettier. Zuomo stilled and examined her seriously. Upon close inspection, it was as he had thought. The marks on Agui's face were almost gone, and the new skin on her face was fine and white. She had a delicate and gentle face with a pointed chin. Zuomo could see the young female that was restrained in the voice. Instinctively, Zuomo reached out towards Agui's face. Agui stood motionless and did not avoid his hand. A strange and fine feeling came from his fingertips. Zuomo's heart jumped. Agui's face suddenly leaned towards Zuomo's hand, and she buried her face in Zuomo's hand. Zuomo's heart beat even faster, but he didn't bear to pull his hand away. Compared to the stopping of time by the king's forbidden firmament, time really did stop in this moment. This taste. This is the taste. It is wonderful. The laughter of the black gold seal soldier came over. He had just killed the sheep-headed monster and sucked in its Shin power. Zuomo was startled and pulled his hand away. His face immediately burned red. He hurriedly dropped his hand, grabbed Agui's hand and pretended to inspect her. However, he quickly stopped pretending. Zuomo's expression became serious. Compared to previously, Agui's Shin power was multiple times stronger. The vastness of the Shin power caused Zuomo's heart to beat rapidly. Fortunately, the Shin power inside Agui's body seemed to recognize Zuomo and did not try to hinder his son's Shin power, happily welcoming him instead. Yet Zuomo's expression became even more serious. The purple chains that restrained Agui had become thinner, but the patterns on the chains became even more dense and fine. There were purple flames that would occasionally rise from the chains. The stronger undying Shin power restrained Agui's soul even more. However, what eased Zuomo's worries slightly was that Agui's soul seemed to have become much more solid. The nether reincarnation lotus and the scab fragrance had helped her greatly. The young female dressed in white robes had a calm expression, and there was a similar purple knotted mark on her forehead. This time, Agui's soul did not detect Zuomo. Yet when his gaze saw the slightly bashful smile on the white-robed Agui's face, Zuomo's heart jumped strangely. At this time, his brow suddenly moved. Ian had come. On the other side of the line of fire, Ian had never felt like this. Behind him, countless gazes focused on him. He felt as though there was a blade pointed at his back, but right now, he had to persist. He had seen the emotion temple being rebuffed. The last bit of hope he felt dissipated. Ian did not fear powers such as the MO Weapon Master Association, however, the rare artifact hall wouldn't have a chance against a titan like the Yao Council of Elder. The only chance was grab onto Xiao Yunhai. Oh no, it was Xiao Mogu. These two names meant two completely different things. Xiao Yunhai was a MO Weapon Grandmaster and represented profit. Xiao Mogu was a Shun power expert, a warlord, and represented survival. No matter when, survival was far more valuable than profit. Ian was a businessperson. He knew that he had to prove his own value for the other to accept him, prove the value of rare artifact haul. Qian now was at odds with the Yao Council of Elders because of Xiao Mo, but if the Xiao Mo didn't want to cause trouble with the Yao Council, he could always ignore their plight. Right now, the only thing that Xiao Mo would pay attention to was the reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass. Xiao Mo was willing to use Earth Mo weapons to trade for reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass. This was enough to show the importance that Xiao Mo placed on the reverse Shadow Soul Silkgrass. He stood silently outside the line of fire and waited for Xiao Mo's summons. Expressing himself like this under the eyes of everyone meant that he left himself no other paths to take. The unfriendly gazes of the Yao Council elders behind him caused him to grit his teeth and persist. Yet he had stood for so long outside the line of fire and the Yao elders hadn't done a thing. This was enough to show how wary they were of Xiao Mo. This increased Ian's confidence. However, more of his confidence was in the contents of the box in his hand. Chapter 735, Kunlun's spirit, a perfect body slowly floated up from the medicine pool. On the tall figure, every muscle was clearly defined and balanced. The eyes on the handsome face were lightly closed. As his eyelids slowly opened, they revealed eyes that were deep like the vast stars, and would cause people to get lost in. He sat up and the water droplets on his body were like the dew on the lily pads, rolling off. He was flawless, a work of the heavens. All of the elders had satisfied expressions. "How do you feel?" the snowy-haired sect leader asked. Lin Xian could hear the concern in the sect leader's words. He did not immediately answer. He tried to move his body and his expression was slightly puzzled. The sect leader saw this and unhesitatingly said, "To the sword testing field." Sword testing field. When Lin Xian effortlessly cut a sword testing stone with a single blow as thought it was tofu, all of the elders inhaled sharply. The sword testing stone was one of the hardest stones in the world. This sword testing stone was Kunlun's largest piece and was over a zhang tall. Even the sect leader, using all his Ling power, would be unable to cut this sword testing stone into two. Lin Xian did not notice the expressions of the elders. He was immersed in a wondrous state. This slightly unfamiliar body contained astounding power. As he moved, Shen power would naturally flow, and it moved to his thoughts. He tried to merge sword essence into it. There was no obstruction and its power skyrocketed. Yet the flying sword in his hand could not tolerate the great Shen power, melting into liquid metal that dripped down. This caused Lin Xian to show a surprised expression. The flying sword in his hand was one of the famed swords of Kunlun, called Heaven's Death. It was 7th grade, and he hadn't thought it would be unable to tolerate Shen power. All of the elders frowned. Shen power was powerful, but if even 7th grade flying swords could not withstand it, then it was slightly troublesome. "It seems that we need to carry out our journeys to the ancient ruins earlier," an elder said gravely. Yes, a 7th grade flying sword actually melted. It is most likely that even an 8th grade sword would be unable to express the power of Shen power, another elder said with a sigh. "It would be great if we had the angel device raiment. I don't know how powerful the two of them combined would be. Why should we sacrifice what is near for what is far? There are so many ruins, there definitely would be 1 or 2 Shen devices. It is just that we did not pay such attention to them in the past." The sect leader's gaze was thoughtful. He suddenly said, "Elder Ming, you try?" "All right." An elder with snowy white hair nodded. He went in front of the bisected sword testing stone. He channeled his Shen power and made a slice. The sword went halfway into the stone. All of the elders were intelligent and immediately showed thoughtful expressions. "As I expected." The sect leader's authoritative eyes flashed as he said gravely, "If one is in Fanshu and starts to cultivate Shen power, their power will increase, but it will be much weaker compared to those who are not in Fanshu." Elder Ming's expression turned stern upon hearing this. He closed his eyes and thought for a while. The sect leader is right. After entering Fanshu, one can communicate with the world and be one with them. It is hard to change paths, and the increase in power is limited. He looked at the flying sword in his hand and his expression was slightly dim. The flying sword in his hand was also 7th grade, yet it was unharmed. It could be seen from this that his Shen power was much weaker than Lin Qian's Shen power. Is it better to cultivate this Shen power as early as possible? An elder couldn't resist saying. Lin Qian, say what you think, the sect leader suddenly said. Lin Qian thought for a moment before slowly speaking. This disciple does not feel that. Our Shen power is actually too different from the Shen power of the ancient ear. Our Shen power comes from Ling power, and it is possible to see it as a new power with Ling power and sword essence as the foundation. It is its own system. Ling power is the foundation. Before Jindan, Ling power will be unstable. After entering Fanshu, it will be completed. This disciple thinks that it should be the disciples that are in Jindan and Yuanying that study Shen power first. It is likely that those at the peak of Yuanying will be affected. However, we will only know the result after trying. This is reasonable. All of the elders nodded. Each of them was profound in cultivation and had a deeper understanding of cultivation than Lin Qian. After Lin Qian pointed this out, each of them realized it. Many elders had dim expressions. Those that were able to become elders were either Fanshu or pseudo-Fanshu that were at the peak of Yuanying. The Shen power they cultivated could not transform as purely as the young disciples. It meant that their potential in Shen power was fated to be limited. They had never thought that the cultivation they had worked so hard for became the obstacle in stopping them from progressing. The mood became slightly low. Lin Qian, the sect leader, suddenly spoke. This disciple is listening. Lin Qian hurriedly went forward and acknowledged. You comprehended Shen power. While the other Shirshu have helped you perfect it, you cannot slack off. You need to study it every day. Starting from today, you are the pavilion master of Sword Pavilion and can form the Sword Pavilion. Lin Qian's body shook. The entire place was silent. All of the elders couldn't help but show surprise. The Sword Pavilion was an unique existence in Kunlun. Every pavilion master of Sword Pavilion was the next sect leader. He needed to create his own Sword Pavilion. Including the Pavilion Master, there would be 9 members of the Sword Pavilion. These would be his support after he ascended to the role of sect leader. The positions of the Sword Pavilion were left vacant most of the time and would only be activated when the sect leader thought that there was a need for a clear successor. Almost everyone knew that the next sect leader of Kunlun was Lin Qian, but no one had expected that the day would come so soon. The sect leader's cultivation was unfathomably deep, his authority great, and he was trusted widely. Elders, are there any objections? The sect leader looked around at the elders. No objections. No objections. All of the elders had solemn expressions and the same attitude. Everyone knew that Lin Qian becoming the Sword Pavilion Master was the hope of all and could not be stopped. This disciple will not fail, Master. Lin Qian did not refuse. His expression became calm again without any excitement. However, the sect leader heard the determination in his voice, and a hint of comfort flashed through his eyes. The sect leader's expression was authoritative, his eyes so bright people could not look directly at him. His snowy white hair moved despite the lack of wind, his voice as strong as the sword. The old balance has been broken, the new era has started. The future of our Kunlun is the hands and youths like them. If they can grasp victory in this chaotic world, Kunlun will win. We will not use the lives of the disciples to conquer those ancient ruins. Every disciple is the hope of Kunlun. It is time for us old people to create paths for them. Everyone, our light is about to dim, our era has passed. The only thing we can do now is to use our still sharp swords, use our remaining light, our remaining life to increase the probability of success of their future. The wind blew past. Above the sword testing field, the sect leader's voice echoed. Every elder listened with concentration. They instinctively straightened, a holy and excited expression on their faces. Their low spirits due to not being able to advance their Shen power disappeared. We are Kunlun, this is our responsibility, this is our destiny. We are bound by duty. If this new era demands there be sacrifices, it should be us, the old people. Starting from today, all materials for the body cultivation pool and for core formation will not be provided to elders and the sect leader. We have found clues to 7 ancient ruins. 3 elders will explore each ruin. My sword should move once again. All the remaining elders will go to the front lines to replace all disciples Jindan and above. All Jindan disciples are to be summoned back to the sect to cultivate Shen power. We need to find those that are talented among them and groom them. We will trade our lives for the time they need to grow. When they have grown up, Kunlun's future will be bright. The authoritative voice was filled with focused presence. Everyone please. For Kunlun. The sect leader bowed, his own brows and hair touching the ground. All the elders had stern yet heated expressions. They all bowed with great respect, and hard to suppress excitement. They shouted together, "We will abide by sect leader's orders." For Kunlun. Lin Qian's nose felt sore, his eyes blurring. He hurriedly bowed his head, both his hands unconsciously balling into fists. For Kunlun. Shu Long had a tired expression. At his side, the hardship guards were lying askew as they slept. The camp was silent and there was only the sound was the rising and fall of breaths. With the hardship guards' strong bodies, a scene like this would only occur when they were completely exhausted. He raised his head to look at the sky that was gradually growing brighter. The ruins and rubble around them indicated that an intense fight had just occurred here. The traveling speed of guard camp had always been a problem. Even though Golden Crow Camp thought of all the ways they could and used all kinds of talismans on them, the effects were not great. They cultivated MO skills, and were not skilled in using talismans. In the end, it was the Ling beasts that Chun Yuqing Darren raised that had solved this problem. However, they were still lacking compared to Vermilion Bird Camp. Therefore, the mission that Gong Suncha had given him was to protect the flank, an important resource Xianxia. It had not taken much effort to conquer Xianxia. At this time, Xiankong Temple did not have much power left to defend Xianxia. However, many factions desired the resource-rich Xianxia. Up until now, Shu Long had led guard camp in defeating 8 battalions from different powers. After the successive hard-fought battles, even the determined guard camp felt deathly exhausted. Suddenly, a paper crane flew over and landed in Shu Long's hand. Shu Long became alert. When he opened the paper crane, an expression of joy came onto his face. The people from Golden Crow Camp were finally arriving. Soon, every soldier in guard camp was woken up. Large numbers of scouts and patrols were sent out to prevent small groups of enemies from penetrating their defensive line and harming Golden Crow Camp. Soon after, a vast fleet of boats appeared. Numerous black dots appeared on the horizon, each dot a treasure ship. As the treasure ship fleet neared, it was possible to hear the urgent shouts and howls coming from the sound-amplifying seal formation. It was extremely hectic on board the treasure ships. Quick, quick, quick! Prepare the material boxes. Prepare to unload the ship. Each time, remain organized, be quick. Everyone pay attention. If any one of you dares to make a mistake, don't blame me for being impolite. Find the marked sites, set up the main seal formation. We have to finish before evening. Just as the fleet stopped, a numerous crowd and innumerable boxes burst out of each treasure ship like numerous floods. The hardship guards on the ground felt the sky darken. In a flash, it was as if the sky and the rising sun's light was blocked out. Chapter 736, Won't forget even in death. Suemo opened the box and was slightly surprised. Why are there 5 reverse shadow soul silk grasses? Ian said carefully and respectfully, the 2 extra are a gift, rare artifacts. Hall hopes to receive Darren's protection. Protection? Suemo immediately reacted and said after a moment of thought. You do not have to do this. Qian killed the Yao elder to help me. I will not stand by and ignore the consequences. Ian grimaced. There naturally will not be any problems while Darren is here. If Darren leaves, then Rare Artifact Hall will immediately face a calamity. Suemo thought and found that Ian's analysis was correct. The Yao Council of Elders was a great power. If they wanted to do something from the shadows, then Rare Artifact Hall would be unable to stop them. He would also not stay for a long time at Buzhou City. You may say what you think, Zuemo asked. Ian said in a respectful voice that was filled with confidence. Darren must deal with many great matters, and does not have the time for minor matters. While Rare Artifact Hall is not one of the biggest businesses in the MO territories, we have a stable foundation. We can become Darren's hand in gathering is distributing materials, transporting resources and selling items. Zuemo was truly surprised now. He hadn't thought that Ian's plan was to fully submit to him. Deeply established family businesses like Rare Artifacts Hall were factions in their own right and would not easily submit to other factions. I will agree to this. Zuemo thought and then said, but you need to think it though. Once you pick a side, you will not be as idle and free as you are now. Dan's expression was joyful as he unhesitatingly bowed. This subordinate has thought this though, and this is not an impulse. Zuemo was very satisfied. Ian's Rare Artifacts Hall was an unexpected haul. No matter if it was Ian's great experience in managing a business, or Rare Artifacts Hall's enormous mercantile network, they were all things that the present Mo Cloud Sea desperately needed now. This was free food dropping down from the sky. Do not spread the news right now. Zuemo paused and thought. Ian immediately understood. Yes. Zuemo said, it is too dangerous outside. Stay here now, and prepare an auction for the Angel Device raiment. Darren is planning to sell the Angel Device raiment? Ian was stunned. Yes, sell it, it is just a pseudoshin device. Zuemo nodded and did not expand further. He said casually, just some simple preparations. Finishing, he disappeared. He left behind a shocked Ian. Only now did Ian realize why even the Yao Council of Elders had come to participate in this event. Pseudoshin device, the Angel Device raiment, was a pseudoshin device. Ian had never seen a Shin device and could not make a professional evaluation, but just the name was enough to make countless people crazy. Just a pseudoshin device. Darren was probably the only one that dared to say it like that. The shock on Ian's face turned into a grimace. Staring at the 5 reverse shadow soul silk grasses in the box, Zuemo couldn't help but become excited. For this he had almost traversed through the greater portion of 100 Savage Realm. In order to not be disturbed, Zuemo came to the underground sacrificial altar. Ague and the black gold seal solder were both standing guard underground. The Yin energy was of benefit to Ague, and the black gold seal soldier liked Yin energy. He copied the bone armor, swallowing Yin energy and then spitting it out. He played about happily. Staring at the reverse shadow soul silk grasses in the box, for some reason, Zuemo's heartbeat suddenly sped up. Strangely, he was slightly nervous. Those riddles that circled his mind, the voice that repeatedly appeared in his dreams, they would all be answered soon. His birth, his previous memories. Zuemo stared dazedly at the reverse shadow soul silkgrass. He didn't move at all. A moment later, his body trembled. His dazed eyes finally recovered a thread of clarity. His practiced wooden face became alive and his eyes focused. He exhaled deeply and turned to look at Ague, who was stand guard silently. For some reason, the bewilderment and nervousness he felt immediately disappeared. He laughed mockingly at his own weakness. Determination and bravery returned to his eyes. He threw a reverse shadow soul silkgrass into his mouth. Something seemed to explode in his mind. Countless streaks of light and sound came at him from all directions. Boom! Zuemo's mind was completely bland and he was in a daze. There seemed to be countless people speaking at his ear. He couldn't make out what they were saying. Countless scenes flashed across his eyes, but he could not see anything clearly. Too much information suddenly sprouted out of his memories and surrounded him. Even with such a strong consciousness, Zuemo could not tolerate so many scenes and voices. The blurry scenes and the noisy sounds seemed to drift far away. Zuemo's world became calm again. Hiding in a corner filled with rubble, a boy trembled. We definitely have to get it. On the other side of the damaged wall, the boy could hear the viciousness in the man's voice. Really? A woman's light laugh sounded. Kunlun is really Kunlun, this present, TSK, different from everyone else. However, Before the old woman died, why didn't I hear Kunlun act so domineering? Go to the side, I feel irritated when I see your Xian Kong temple's falseness. The man said disdainfully. You really wound me, I want to ally with you. If that thing ends up in the hands of Tianhuan and Xixian. The woman pretended to be wounded and said. No need, the man said proudly, we, Kunlun, never need to ally with anyone. Don't waste effort, it cannot be used, the Jinji cannot be opened. Motherfucker, we spent so much energy to get this pile of scrap metal. They may have detected something. However, they would not bear for it to become scrap metal, they would definitely have something else up their sleeve. Did someone manage to escape? There seems to be one child that we have not found. How can such a mistake happen? He is trash. He doesn't like cultivating, and I heard that the old woman did not like him. Who is he to the old woman? The old woman's grandson? You idiot. Go find him. No matter what, find him. I want to see him alive or dead. In a dark and damp secret room, the small boy looked with intoxication at the mysterious patterns in front of him. For some reason he felt strangely close to these mysterious patterns. Especially those from the many jade scrolls, these would cause him to feel intimacy and warmth. Who let you in? A cold and shrill voice suddenly came from behind him. The young boy's hand shook and the jade scroll dropped to the ground. He turned around. An old woman with an icy expression was looking at him expressionlessly. But the young boy's face was ashen white. Speak. The old woman shouted harshly. I solved the Jinji. Terror filled the young boy's mind and he stammered. The old woman was silent. You like these things very much? A moment later, the old woman suddenly spoke. Her expression was still cold, but for some reason, she did not seem to be as intimidating as before. Yes. The young boy's terror decreased greatly as he bowed his head and spoke. The old woman's gaze was piercing and the young boy didn't dare to raise his head. These are the things that your father left you. I do not agree, but you have still found your way in. Starting from today, this place belongs to you. The old woman finished speaking expressionlessly and turned to leave. Starting today, she is your ghost? There was a young girl with a timid expression dressed in white robes standing next to the old woman. What is a ghost? The little boy asked fearfully. A person to protect you? The old woman was expressionlessly. A person to protect me? The young boy didn't seem to understand. Why does she have to protect me? Because I will die, the old woman said coldly. Gue, this name is not pleasing to hear, the young boy muttered. His hands didn't slow at all. The young girl tilted her head. Gue feels it is very good. How come you work so hard at such a boring thing like cultivating? The young boy was puzzled as he carefully treated the wounds on the young girl's feet. The young girl was teary due to the pain and her voice contained a sob. However, it was unusually determined. Because only when I become strong will I be able to protect young master. It is very safe here. There is no need to protect me. I don't like to go outside. The little boy's head shook like a rattle drum. What happens if that day comes? The young girl tilted her head. You are thinking too much. The little boy pretended to be an adult and tapped the young girl's head. The young girl covered her head. What is the old woman teaching you? Why are you wounded every time? The little boy said furiously, Is she beating you? Don't talk about grandma like that. The young girl pushed out her cheeks in anger. Alright, I won't say anything. She doesn't like me anyways. The little boy was slightly dispirited. Grandma is very concerned about you, the little girl hurriedly comforted. No, I know, she doesn't like me, the little boy's voice was low, because she doesn't like my mother, I know. You are right. A cold voice came from behind him. The old woman was expressionless but hate flashed across her eyes. The tree branches whipped painfully against his face but the little boy gritted his teeth. Ague had carried him and ran for many days, so many that he had lost count. Agui's steps faltered. He fell off her back, hitting the ground he became dizzy. A stream of blood spilled out the corner of Agui's mouth. She crawled next to him and said with a sob, young master, are you hurt? He tried to make his smile easy. No, I'm fine. Young master, I really am useless. Ague bit her lips, tears in her eyes. It's young master who is useless. He reached out and rubbed Ague's hair like usual. Gue, run. No. Ague shook her head stubbornly. He sighed. They used a secret spell and left behind a mark in my consciousness. No matter how we run, we will not be able to escape. No. Ague stilled and then screamed heartbreakingly, her tears spilling out. He smiled and rubbed Ague's head. Run, Gue, and live for me as well. Ague reached out her dirty hand and wiped away her tears. She suddenly picked him up and put him on his back and started to run frantically without a word. Gue, it is useless. Put me down. He urged many times on the road. After running for an unknown number of days, the last bit of Ague's energy ran out. The two of them fell to the ground. Ague's face was ashen. Her power had been used up. She struggled and crawled next to him. Ague's face was as white as paper. She touched his face and murmured, Young master, will you forget Ague? Of course not. He smiled weakly. He was also at the end of his energy. Young master, you definitely cannot forget Ague. Ague's face was suddenly covered in tears. The hot tears fell on his face. His consciousness started to fade as he murmured, Yes, even in death I won't forget. You're tuning into the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.